Hey everyone, welcome to HR Summer School. So glad that you're here with us and looking forward to another fun and amazing day here with you. I am wearing my class of 21 shirt in honor of day 2 here today. And I just found out this morning my new shirt won't be here in time for tomorrow. So we'll have to improvise, wear one of the kids' shirts or something else just so I can wear something fresh for summer school. So glad everybody's here with us. And if you weren't here with us yesterday, you're in for a treat. I know you'll enjoy this. If you were, welcome back. We're glad to have you. George, so glad to see you again, my friend, and looking forward to today's conversations. Some great stuff. I was telling you before we got started here for everybody else that like we're going to have to keep it kind of lean in between the sessions and stick to our breaks and stuff today so that we have time to get to all the good stuff because we have some incredible speakers and content and things like that. I'm so pumped for the day and I hope you are as well.
I am, Ben. I'm excited. I had a lot of good conversations yesterday following day 1 and a lot of good feedback with a lot of great people, some new faces, a lot of freshmen that are rolling in. Some people are like, what do you mean by freshmen? With summer school, everybody's kind of jumped on the theme of how many years they've been a part of it. And so a lot of our juniors are in the house. We got some sophomores as well. But I'm just excited to be back with our friends and family and in the HR community. Community, with that. So just a brief reminder, make sure you use that hashtag HR Summer School for all your posts. Like and share this stream. Share with everybody else within your LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, wherever you may be watching today. But I'm ready to get started, man. I'm ready for class.
Right. Good stuff. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump through some quick announcements, and then we're going to dive right into our amazing speakers. We have some good stuff. I'll give you a preview on what the day is going to hold in just a little bit, but really quickly, just a couple of announcements to get through some things. So as always, we're going to give away a ton of stuff. Yesterday, we gave away plenty, and today we're going to continue that trend. So stay engaged, keep commenting, keep connecting. Some of the sessions specifically, we'll actually be looking for people who are chiming in during those sessions to give things away. So stay tuned for that. I've had a couple emails already about SHRM and HRCI credits. We love our credits. I mean, nobody loves credits like HR people. So just a heads up that this is submitted to the organizations. They are SHRM and HRCI as a single event. And so we can't share any information about credits until after the event is over. And even then we'll have to share that specifically in a certain way with you by their guidelines and everything. So we'll share that after the event is over. Stay tuned. You will have to watch every day to get all that, but it's worth it for the 7.5 hours. And yesterday we broke LinkedIn, which if you've never heard that phrase before, it's kind of a running joke here at summer school, actually, George, right? The first year the LinkedIn shut down the stream entirely. We had to start a new one because we had couple thousand people on there and they just couldn't handle it. If your LinkedIn starts getting kind of wonky, that's the technical term, if it starts hiccuping or restarting or jumping back, all you have to do is refresh. If that doesn't work or it keeps hanging up on you, you can jump over to Facebook or to YouTube. I find there sometimes those work a little bit better, less issues, but you miss all the fun conversations. So we can see your comments, and if you will comment, if you're over there, say hello. If you're on YouTube right now, I'll see all 20 something of you. Most people are over here on LinkedIn, but if you're on YouTube, you're watching on Facebook, say hello. I can bring your comments in and share with everybody else. If you have a good takeaway or something else that you appreciate about one of the speakers, feel free to join. I'll make sure you're part of the conversation. A couple of quick things we're going to run through really quickly. So I realized as we were getting towards the very end of the registration for summer school that I wanted to know how many of you were freshmen, sophomore, or senior. And so we put a question into the survey or the entry form when you're submitting your registration for the event after many of you had registered. Most of you after you had registered. That's my fault entirely. So I'm going to give you a bribe. I'm going to bribe you with a chance to win a gift card here. If you will go back in and just update that last bit on your registration there on Eventbrite. So if you go in there and you check it and the questions are already answered, great. But just go through these steps really quickly. I posted in the chat a few minutes ago. Take these things. It takes you 30 seconds, a minute at the most, and you'll get a chance. We're going to do that drawing probably first thing tomorrow. So you need to get this done today if you want to be entered to do that. Just a reminder for you there. A quick thank you to the companies who are helping to make this event possible. We heard from Keith Webb at UKG yesterday, which was a ton of fun. The team at Phenom actually put us in touch with Kellee at Southwest. Many of you loved Kellee's energy and her passion. Today, we're going to hear from Troy at Wanido about how to talk in a language your CEO and CFO care about. We're going to hear from Dr. Hallie Bregman, who's using Goody as a customer and is going to talk about recognition, employee experience, and how do we measure those things. And we're also going to hear from MacGregor at Plum today, talking about potential and how to help our workforce really thrive, which I think really fits in well with our theme and our messages here. So thank you to all of them. And we'll be doing some giveaways and things alongside those sessions. So stay tuned. I mentioned the new shirt that I'm not going to have in time. And this, George and I were talking about community earlier. One of the things that we do every year is put together a shirt that reflects what the event is about. So I should have put it here on the screen. Maybe I'll get it later as a reminder. But 2 years ago, the shirt put together was a word cloud of the key things we talked about. And it was all about serving and leadership and how to take care of our people. This last year, we actually focused on you, the participants. And so we did a word cloud shaped like HR. Well, I guess I'm wearing it. I can show this one with every name of every attendee in there. And so it's something fun just to reflect on. This is about all of you, not about me, not about George, as much as we all love George. It's not about us. And so this year, it's going to be about the community and unity in that. So just wanted to share that. That link there will get you right over to it. You can check that out, all the fun stuff. All right. One more thing that we're going to get into our agenda for the day. So we had a ton of people share on LinkedIn about their experience yesterday, what they learned, what they were excited about learning, and so on, all those kind of things. I grabbed 2 of those screenshots, but there were probably 2 dozen already out there. And so I grabbed some names. So if you are listed here, I actually don't have the email address here. I'll make sure, watch for the email address if you didn't catch it yesterday, events@lhra.io. George, if you can post that in the chat, possibly. events@lhra.io. If you want a prize here on the screen, we're going to do some giveaways for you as a thank you for sharing about the event and your experiences and what you learned. We're going to do this again tomorrow as well, and we'll continue to. So share after the event's over today. We appreciate that. It helps spread the word. It helps, the rising tide lifts all shifts. All of us get better when we share. Okay, let's jump into the agenda for the day. So here's what we're going to cover. Today's going to be a tremendous experience. First up, we're going to hear from Kellee Webb, who is she's an HR leader in the trenches, just like all of you. She has great insights, and she's someone who I've listened to for a long time about how to grow not just your people in the business, but your HR team as you grow the business. So it's a really fun conversation, playing to your people's strengths, things like that. It's going to be a great discussion. I've already told you what to expect with Hallie's session over there on recognition and those things. Caitlin's session is going to be phenomenal. So we've got some great stuff lined up for you today. Yesterday, if you caught it, I actually flip the agenda on accident and put my break before one of our speakers. So we'll make sure and do that right today. So George is going to make sure I don't trip up on that one. So without any further ado, I think we're going to jump into this. George, thanks for posting that for me. All of you, again, stay connected in the comments. We love hearing from you. We love you being part of this experience. It's a ton of fun for us to be able to see you and to engage with you and for you to engage with each other. All right, George, you ready to get rolling? All right.
The bell has rung. Let's start.
All right. Class is in session. Here we go, everybody. We're going to hear from Kellee Webb to kick us off for the day, how to grow your HR team, play to their strengths as you grow your organization. It's a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Everybody, welcome to another session here at Summer School. I hope that you're having a tremendous time so far today. And I've been looking forward to this session so much because Kellee and I go way back. We probably don't want to count how many years it is that she and I have been kind of chatting and conversing and sharing ideas over the years. And so when I was thinking about what conversation I wanted to have this year summer school, one of the things that I've seen in the data that we've been collecting is that the number of job postings for HR leaders is up about 600% higher than what everybody expected to be pre-pandemic. That's because more companies are saying we need more people to help our people, to serve our people, to support our people. And so one of the people that I know that does that really well is Kellee. She has helped her team to grow as the company has grown over time. I had her on the podcast a couple of years ago. Actually, it surprised me, Kellee, to know how long back that was. And I wanted to have that discussion here more broadly for everybody else. So I want you all to take notes on this. If you're adding people to your team, if you're thinking about developing yourself as a professional, she'll give you some good ideas on how to think about that, how to look at that in a very practical kind of way. All right, I think I've set you up for success, Kellee. Welcome, glad to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Ben.
Absolutely. So before we get into some of those fun things, would you take a minute and tell the audience a little more about who you are and what you do, please?
Absolutely. So my name is Kellee Webb. Again, we won't go into the number of years that I've been in HR. It's been a few, over 20. I am the Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer of Synacor Foundation. Synacor Foundation is a nonprofit behavioral health, substance use, and drug and alcohol treatment program. We've been around, it'll be our 55th year, and I've been there for almost 13 years now. Before that, I've been in a mix of for-profit and nonprofit HR consulting, but happy to say I found my work home with Synacor, and I'll be here until they carry me out or I retire.
They're gonna be removing you from the building at some point, but
exactly.
That's. I'm just picturing you saying, "No, I've got one more thing to file, one more conversation. No, I'm just gonna coach that one more leader. Just
one more thing."
Goodness. So you've had the pleasure of growing over the time as the company has grown too, right? You're telling me before we started recording that one of the things that's, I don't know if you're known for this or you just have a proclivity for it, or it just happens a lot in your space, but you do acquisitions. And so the company's continued to grow. And I've had the pleasure in the past of working with a leader who said, hey, as we grow, you're going to grow, right? We're going to continue making sure that you are honing your skills and stepping up into other levels beyond what you're doing right now. And that was the thing that you and I discussed previously. I'd love to bring that into the conversation, if you don't mind, because for those out there that are growing their teams, who are adding people onto their teams, what should they keep in mind? What's important when you're growing an HR team? Maybe some specific things you're looking for, or some dynamics that you're like, oh, this is the thing that you've got to have, or whatever else. It's kind of an open-ended question, but you've done this a lot, so I'd love to just get your take on that.
Absolutely. Well, I'll go back just a little bit to come forward. When I started with Synacor in 2009, we were 82 employees in 3 locations. It was myself and a part-time HR assistant part-time. So we did everything. And when I first started, we had no HRIS system. It was all paper timesheets, PTO, and a spreadsheet. And so the first thing, of course, we set about doing is trying to automate that and getting a strong HRIS, because when I interviewed my CEO, when he interviewed me, he said we are growing. There's more need and more communities than is currently being filled. And so we're going to continue to grow. So I want you to be able to grow this department. So from the very beginning, I knew that was imperative. It was part of our strategic plan. So I started by setting some really solid processes in place. And one of the things that I've always truly believed in is you hire for attitude and you train for skills. It's a bare minimum. We work together too many hours to have, everybody's going to have an off day, but to have someone who comes in consistently negative is just not something that you want on your team. So when myself and my HR assistant, a couple of years went by, and we were growing, we did a lot with our HRIS system, but we had a couple of acquisitions, and it came time to add someone to the team. And we'd gone with ADP for our HRIS system, and we really wanted someone who knew ADP, who could just pick up payroll and run with it, because we were so busy, we were growing. And we had a couple of interviews, and they knew ADP. These ladies that we interviewed knew ADP inside and out, but just the attitude wasn't there. The culture fit wasn't there. For us, being a fit for our culture and having a heart for serving our clients, it has to be there for a nonprofit. And we just didn't feel that. And so we actually had a referral, a young lady, one of our facility directors referred a young lady who was just out of college, had literally just graduated with her psychology degree. She goes, I know you want someone who knows ADP because you need to plug them in right away, but she's got a great attitude and she is so passionate about HR. She wants to grow in HR. This is her passion. Just interview her. And I was like, of course. And I'm happy to say that she came on board as our HR coordinator. We grew her into our HR generalist. And now, most recently, this past year, she got promoted to our HR manager. And so within the last 6 years, she's had 3 promotions and just done a phenomenal job. And now I'm happy to say we've grown that entire team. And she now has 3 recruiters, as well as 1 HR coordinator who is now reporting to her. And so it's just been great to see the growth that's come along. And I truly believe it is, it's pouring into those team members as you develop them up, and then they learn how to pour into others, because it doesn't just stop with me, right? It's that HR manager that I'm pouring into. She now has such a passion for pouring into others. So she's taken that, and it's just, to me, it's about having that passion yourself and then building that passion in others to, in return, give that back to other people. So you continue to grow that team out, because I can't touch everybody. I can't be pouring in the same way to every single person. Now, as far as the team and the dynamics we set up for the team, we have weekly meetings. And our weekly meetings are talking, we always start with either an icebreaker or talking about our successes for the week, or talking about what we're doing outside of work to develop ourselves personally. And so that development and that discussion of growth isn't just what are you doing at work, it's what are you doing holistically. So it's a common theme for us to talk about and to really express on an ongoing basis. So it's not just a one and done.
I want to pull that apart and talk about 15 different things in there. Goodness gracious.
Sure.
I'll tell you one thing really quickly, that a couple things that came to mind. Number one, I feel like the attitude piece is important for any role, but you're in HR and you're the face of how we treat people at the business. I would argue it's even more important. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
So years ago, my wife worked for an organization, and whenever she had to deal with the HR person, she'd say, hey, would you ask her this question about benefits or whatever else? Because I don't understand the benefits. And this person was unpleasant, they just may have been overworked. I don't know. I don't want to read too much into it. But
Right.
every time I interact with that person, we had this moment, we just looked at each other like, how do you get to that point? And so that was, that hit me when you said that. I hired someone like you years ago to be my right hand, basically, when I couldn't get all the things done. And she was a finance major. She was in college, so she was only going to work for us for up to 2 years while she was in college. But she had spent some time working for Chick-fil-A, and one of the things they look for as well is that kind of servant's heart. I'm looking for, how can I take care of you? What can I do to go over the top and just serve you well? And so when I had that person, and I had someone else who had a degree in HR, who had a year of experience, but I'm going back and forth, and like, I wanted that attitude, that person that, regardless of how ridiculous the request is that comes in, because we get a lot of those, regardless, that I wanted her to treat them respectfully and kindly and help figure out how to solve their problem. So I'm totally with you on those things. I think I didn't expect you to go that direction with it, but I love that perspective, and I love that encouragement out there for everybody else too, by the way, that this is something that reflects on the entire the HR culture, how we treat people at the business, is whether you're open to that kind of thing, or if you're the one that says, hey, here's the numbers, buy the books, we're focusing on the rules, the policies, and we let the people stuff fall to the wayside, and you're missing
Yeah.
a chance to really connect with people in a deeper way.
I have two more things on that quickly. First and foremost, one of the things that I like to share. So we have our facilities where we treat clients, inpatient, outpatient, are located all around Texas, and we've now recently expanded into New Mexico. And the thing that I like to share to any team member coming on board with us, we call our corporate office our facility support center. It's not the corporate office, it's not the ivory tower where information comes down from above. The thing that I like to share to anyone we hire at our facility support center, our corporate office, is that we're here to serve the facilities. Anything in this office can be outsourced. HR can be outsourced, marketing can be outsourced, revenue cycle can be outsourced, our call center can be outsourced. Do I think outsourcing it, they could do as good of a job as us? No, I don't think so, but it could happen. And so the thing that I like to share is I want you to think of yourself as a consultant. And every single one of our facilities is your client. And if you had to send an invoice to every single facility every single month, would you be able to pay your rent or mortgage? Would they want to pay that invoice based on the value that you've added to that team? And when that phone rings or that Teams meeting comes up, somebody calling from the facilities is not an interruption of your job. That is your job. That is your job. So whatever project you're working on, you need to set that aside, and you need to have a smile on your face when you click that button for that Teams meeting or pick up the phone. And I think it's that mindset of, the people in our facilities, those team members, those are the ones that are doing the heavy lifting with our clients. We're here to support them and make their lives easier so they can go about their day and do their job well. The other thing behind that, something that we just initiated foundation-wide for us across all of our locations this last year. It started, we do leadership conferences every year with their senior managers, directors, and executives. And we typically like to read a book each time. And so we have a common theme and things that we're common vocabulary we're trying to bring together for the team. Have you read the book, The Energy Bus?
I have not.
It's a quick read. It is a great read. We started with our leadership team, and then we brought it to our managers conferences in December. We bring all our managers together and train them once a year. And then we've taken it back to our facilities, and every single one of our team members has read this book called The Energy Bus. And it's about, you're the driver of your bus. You're the one that controls your attitude. You're the one that controls the direction that you're going. It's a quick read. People can probably read it in an hour. We have turned this into a movement in our organization. So if someone comes in and they're having a bad day, you check on them. How's your energy today? Are you on the bus? Or are you off the bus today? Is your one of your tires flat? What's going on? And so it's given us this common language and this movement. Our employee recognition cards, little printed cards that we have a bus on the front, and it says, "Thank you for driving your bus." And it's just, we have all of this woven into our culture now to remind ourselves that we're the driver of our positive energy, and we've got to do that every day. And if we do it for ourselves, that is going to exude out onto our clients. And so you're right, it's more than just what's going on in the HR department. It's how you layer that in across the entire organization.
One of my favorite speakers, podcasters, or whatever, I've followed him for many, many years. I've one of my favorite authors. One of the things that he said for a long time, and I fully agree with it, is that 80% of our success at work has nothing to do with the skills we bring or anything else. It's the mindset, the attitude, the approach you bring to things, because that makes people want to work with you or not, as you said earlier, right? Or it makes you, it can lead to all these other great outcomes when it comes to work. If you are the person people want to be around, want to work alongside, all those kind of things. So I'm so glad that you brought that piece of this. I want to go back to something kind of tactical, if you don't mind. You talked about the meetings that you're having. You have your team get together. They're talking about all these things, and it's so easy for those listening here, all the other leaders listening, to say, yeah, but when we get together, we've got to talk about this stuff. We've got an agenda. We've got this problem or that new process, or we're looking at a new vendor for this, and we're doing all this stuff. And I completely get that. do you carve out a piece of the agenda and say, hey, the first 10 minutes are this, or the last 10 minutes are focused on this, or hey, we've got to make sure and hear from everybody in the room one of their wins this week? Like, how do you make sure that doesn't get overshadowed by all the stuff you just got to get done?
The stuff that's got to get done will always be there. It will always be there. It's still going to have to get done. If you are not leading your team in these conversations and you're not supporting and valuing that time of just general, especially if you have teams that are remote, if you're not making some of those connections on a regular basis and having those non-business conversations, if you don't truly get to know some of the things about them as a person, they're not going to feel as valued. It's to me, it's very, it may only be 15 minutes. Sometimes we go 20 minutes into our hour. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, depending on what it is. And this is our HR and training team, and we have a total of 9 people on our team right now. And so it may be each person talks 2 or 3 minutes. And so we may go a little bit longer. It's okay. It's okay, because you're celebrating successes with them, or you're finding out something about them. And then the other thing that we do is we have, it's called a little sheet that you fill out. Some people call it their favorite things. Our title now is what drives your energy bus, and it's your favorite candy, your favorite restaurants, your favorite this, your favorite that. And so, getting to know little things about your team like that will enable you to recognize them in a way that's very personal. And so to me, these little snippets each week, it's 15 to 20 minutes of your entire week with your team. And if you can't take that to get to know them a little bit better, or help recharge them in a positive way, help them focus on their successes, share your own successes. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be something that's about work, or it's about achievement. Sometimes it's, what's the silliest HR meme that you've seen? Drop it in the chat. That one's always interesting.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just something. At Synacor, we do very serious work. We are helping people overcome addiction, and not every story is a success story. And so it can be some pretty heavy work sometimes. And so having those moments when you can bring it back around and make it lighter, and have fun with your team is really, really important, because they're dealing with a lot every single day. And just and this is, I think, even more important since COVID and all of the things surrounding mental health and how stretched people are right now. The more that you can have these moments like this and connect with your team, and do so with some humor and have a little bit of fun together, it's going to bond your team to you, and they're going to want to work even harder for you. And that's what I found with my team. The more that I appreciate them as an individual, and take a few moments with them and ask them how they're doing. I know that you're about to move into that new house. How is that going for you? What are your hurdles? And understanding who they are as people, not just from what they can do for me in the job, but also who they are. That's some of the best feedback that we've gotten from the team, is I get to be my true self at work. I get to be myself at work, and I feel valued. And I don't feel like I'm just here to get things done. I feel like you really care, and they value that.
Kellee, I would love to ask you 15 more follow-up questions, but we've got to keep our time close. So I want to give people a chance here. I'll make sure and put the link to your LinkedIn profile over here in the comments, so people can click right over, connect with you, because I know they're going to want to after hearing you share for the last little bit. If they want to learn more about the work that you and the team are doing at Synacor, or anything else, is that the best way to connect with you? Just follow you on LinkedIn, or is there another way?
Yeah, definitely. If you want to know more about Synacor, it's Synacor, CENIKOR.org. Or if you'd like to email me directly, it's kwebb@synacor.org.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again for joining us. I appreciate your passion, your insights, and your encouragement for your team. That's an incredible story.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it. Thank you, Ben.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So for everybody else out there, stay tuned for more. I was going to give you one last snippet thing that I heard someone else say recently, and it makes me think of Kellee so well here. This woman talked about the greatest leader she ever had. And she said the thing that made her great was as she stepped up a rung on the ladder, she reached back and pulled someone up behind her. And that's the picture that I was drawn for me here in this conversation too. So thank you, Kellee, again. To all of you, hang tight for another HR Summer School session coming right up. Oh, goodness gracious. Kellee is a treasure. She's so fun. She's incredible as a leader, and just one of those people that I respect and appreciate on so many levels. So, Kellee, thank you again for joining us. I saw you there in the chat. Appreciate you for sharing some wisdom and some encouragement with us. The book recommendation, we are wild on the book recommendations here at Summer School, as you all well know, and so that was another good one. So excellent stuff. All right, we're going to move right along on our next speaker. So we have a good agenda, but a busy agenda today. So we're going to dive right into our next speaker. We're going to hear from Dr. Hallie Bregman. We're going to hear from her about the importance of recognition and using that as a way to connect with people. And we're going to be giving away some stuff after her session. So stay tuned, stay connected, stay engaged during hers. Share the big takeaways you get or ways that you do recognition at your company, whatever you'd like to share during her session, because we will actually come out after her session's over with, and I'll give away some things there. So here we go. Let's looking at the agenda as I was putting this together, and we have doctors on a couple of different days, and I try to spread them out for all the wisdom and intelligence and all the good ideas and stuff will be spread out across the events. We all get some good hits every single day. And one of these is here with us right now, Dr. Hallie Bregman. We're going to talk about employee experience. Her focus is measurements and impact and trying to understand those things. And so I'm super pumped to have her here with us. And Hallie, I'm glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for calling me doctor. It's been a while. So flattered.
What I found is I want to speak for you, but several of my friends who have had here in the past, we had Dr. David Arrington, who's a leadership expert, things like that. But he's like, I use that when I'm submitting for the credits and stuff like that. I was like, don't ever call me that in real life, because that's just
like, I'm just Hallie.
Just Hallie. And and by the way, and thank you to the team over at Goody. They're the ones who put us in touch. It's funny because when they're like, hey, we want you to talk to Hallie, see if she'd be willing to join you for summer school. I'm thinking, is that the Hallie, the one that I'm already like following on LinkedIn and see what it was a great moment for me to be able to bring those things together. So I'm excited you're here. Would you give the audience a little bit more about who you are and what you do in case they're not already following you?
Yeah, sure. So Hallie Bregman, excited to be here. I have a long and windy career, but I've spent the last 6 or so years building and scaling people analytics teams and running people functions. And so really thinking about that people strategy component. I'm currently CEO and founder of the Bregman Group, so a consultancy that helps companies with data-driven people strategy and DEI. Yeah, I could talk all day, but I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, I'm excited about that. So all of you listening in, if you're thinking, oh, this analytics stuff is interesting, or I've always wanted to get into that, I'll make sure the links in the show notes or in the comments later on at the end, but go ahead and follow her now. Connect in, click over from her profile and follow her here on LinkedIn, because you will not regret it. So Hallie, the thing that I wanted to talk to you about, just talk about analytics and data and proving the impact of the work that we do every day. And one of the things I wanted to bring to you as a conversation point is we have some of the things we do are very much data driven already, right? Recruiting, we can see a lot of things that happen, the outcomes, all that. But when it comes to things like employee experience, that feels very vague and fluffy. Probably not a scientific term, but we'll go with it. What are your thoughts on that? And are there ways for us to actually start looking at certain aspects of it to help us get a better understanding of what's working, what's impacting, and things like that? It's a really broad question, but just something to kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, employee experience is just central to everything that we do, right? As HR professionals, our goals are to improve the employee experience. I think that is the number one objective these days. And that's really been a shift from the past. And you're right. It's kind of like, what is employee experience consist of? And I think there's a bunch of pieces that go into it. Certainly, it's always going to be subjective. And so some of that is based on employee perception. How do you find the experience? And so I think there are certainly surveys and things along those lines that really help us understand that. The other piece is around recognition and feedback. And I think this is really a lot of the forefront of what employees experience in the workplace, how they're getting feedback on what they can do better and how they're getting celebrated when they do things well. This is how they build connections. This is how they build trust. And it's certainly how they talk about their workplace when they're out in the market talking to friends and colleagues and peers. Hey, this happened and so was recognized for it. And that was really cool.
I've never stopped to think about it that way, right? I think about it happening inside the confines of the business or inside our four walls, but I can think about many times where I wouldn't just talk about something that I'd received at work, but I talk about someone else. You'll never guess what happened to Tina the other day, right? Her team crushed this goal and they got this as a recognition of that, right? Here's the outcome there for them. And I remember telling stories, again, the friends and family and other people about those things because it was so powerful for me to see that happening for her. And I'm like, what do I have to do, right, to get into that same bucket? So there's all these different levers we can pull when it comes to employee experience and really trying to get our arms around that, to think about the different elements of it. What does it take to do that well? I mean, you just barely touched on giving recognition, and we could spend, again, just an hour just on that piece of it. But what are your thoughts on what it takes to do that and do it with real impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a wide landscape now of tremendous tools that help us do that, right? So I think there's a long history of managers saying good job to their employees, right? And that didn't bring visibility. It wasn't structured, right? It felt good, but it wasn't quite the same in terms of impact. And so now there's tools that do things like peer-to-peer recognition, right? That I love, like a good recognition wall where everybody can see who's been recognized. I think that kind of thing feels even better because I can put my little emoji response that, hey, so-and-so that I know got recognized. Really good job. I'm impressed. And that makes them feel even better than just hearing it from their manager. I also think there's tools like Goody that help us structure recognition and make it a little bit easier for us to facilitate. So the example here, right, is like, I was running HR for a company and I wanted to celebrate everybody's birthday. And my predecessor was like tracking it and going on Urban Stems and ordering something and looking up their address. It was a whole rigmarole. So the easier that is to automate, where you can make, and then she missed birthdays, right? Like she was out on PTO, whatever it is. And so using something like Goody where you can actually just like schedule it and set it and forget it, right? And it's still meaningful, impactful, personalized, all of the things that you want it to be, but I don't have to do it every day, wins in my book. And so I think those kinds of technologies are really helping us amplify recognition.
Thinking back to the baskets, I had a wicker basket in the corner of my office with gift cards in it and a log on top so I could track who got what. And that was my very sophisticated system for like little spot things when a manager's like, hey, I want to give something special to this person because they finished this thing early or whatever else. Yeah. Okay, who's getting it, and all right, how much is the gift card, and here's
And that was doable when we were all in an office, but now with remote work, right, and distributed and hybrid, everybody's all over the place. And so what you don't want to happen is recognition only to occur to those who spend time in the office, right? I think that just plays into the proximity bias that we're going to have to monitor very closely in this new world, but you want it accessible and democratized. And so things you can send over email or in the mail or in virtual platforms certainly help us do that better.
Right. Can I push back on something you shared and get your take on it a little bit?
Yeah.
You talked about scheduling this, right? So you can set it and you can forget it. And one of the things that I've advised managers in the past when they're like, yeah, but I don't do that soft stuff, right? I don't do the pat on the back. They should just, do their work. And I've encouraged them, hey, just put something on your calendar on Fridays at 2:00, whatever time is good for you. And just take a few minutes to reach out to each of your people and tell them, hey, I've seen this thing. I want to recognize you for that. If it was just a moment to do that. And the argument is, well, some will push back saying that feels very mechanical, very routine, like that's not heartfelt. I'd love to get your take on that because there's an interplay there. I think that's an interesting conversation to have. And what's your thoughts? I look at it, I'll give you my perspective after you share. So what's your thought on that first?
Yeah. I think things like a birthday or an anniversary are set it and forget it kind of things, right? Or onboarding, right? But those more unique touch points are key to be engaged in. And I actually think of this as like moments that matter, right? In the moment feedback. And so, yeah, you can do it every Friday afternoon, but even better if you do it the moment it happens, right? So we're in a one-on-one. Let's do that feedback in real time. My manager is watching, sitting in on a meeting that I'm running, and they have feedback, both positive and constructive. You should have a 15-minute debrief right at the end of that meeting. No need to wait until Friday afternoon or the next one-on-one, right? It's fresh, it's in your mind. And so the more we can get into this habit of giving feedback when feedback occurs, I think that's when it's really the most impactful. Otherwise, you're kind of like, what did I say? Okay, thank you. You're telling me I did a good job, but like, I can't remember what it was that I said that you're thinking was good. And so we all have a lot on our minds. It's easy to forget. So that real-time feedback is critical.
Okay, I love that. That's a great approach to that, because the way I've encouraged it is you start doing that just to start building the muscle of giving feedback.
Yeah.
And then you start seeing moments where, hey, I can just tell him now because I've seen that and I'm really proud of them for that. All right. But for going from a cold start to, hey, I'm just going to see the moments when you're shining and just come and celebrate those with you, that's not likely to happen.
No.
And one of the other things that I'd like to get your take on is, you talked about for those teams who are not in the office or who have some virtual component or who have people, they have a team that's partially in, partially remote. How do you recommend doing that? Because sometimes you don't always see those moments, or it might be a little bit different, a little bit harder to say, okay, let's grab each other in a hallway for 5 minutes afterwards just to recap. Yeah. Any advice or recommendations for those who have people who are outside the office or remote?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's scheduling like that 15 minutes, like it doesn't have to be long, just off the bat. Hey, this is a meeting. Let's put on time right after. Maybe I'll have feedback, maybe I won't. And if I don't, we'll just cancel it, right? But it's there and it's a placeholder. So I think that's one component. The other thing is really, we have to track this, right? And so the thing that systems help us do, right, is track, right? When we were just doing it, hey, good job, it's never recorded, it's not documented. And so the more that this occurs in systems of record, gives us the ability to have that visibility where we can say, hey, Ben's remote, and it looks like he's actually getting 5 times less feedback than Hallie, who's in the office. Like, how are we going to change that, right? And that just brings a level of awareness to a manager. And sometimes that's all it takes, is that awareness. Sometimes it takes a little bit more structure, and maybe then your Friday afternoon meetings would be a really good stepping stone. But it's that first piece is that you have to know. You have to know. If you don't know, then you don't know, right? It's the critical piece.
If you don't know what you're comparing it against, right, you're going to struggle with that.
Yep.
That's one of the things, again, you live in the world of measurement. And so this isn't a surprise to you, but when I talk to leaders sometimes, they're like, yes, we started this thing and now we're trying to figure out, how do we know if it's working or not?
Yes.
The way you figure out if it's working is you decide how you're going to measure before you start.
Yes.
That's the best way to do it.
Yes.
The best time to plant a tree, 10 years ago or yesterday, or whatever the metaphor is, right? You need to figure out how you're going to measure this impact as far back as you can. If you can't do that, then you start baselining it now and then start comparing it in that case, right? And obviously the answer for everybody out there listening is you promote Hallie and you fire Ben. That's the answer to that question, because you're incredible and I'm just, whatever. I'm the road guy. No.
We're both incredible.
Goodness. So I love this, the kind of the ground we're covering here, because I think it's interesting. I want to actually pose a question back out to the audience who's listening in right now, by the way, because you've talked about a couple different things in this conversation. I'd love to hear from you out there just to get a quick pulse on everyone. Do you do anything for people's birthdays? Do you do anything for service anniversaries? Do you have another thing that you do? Like, hey, it's our company's birthday this year. Celebrate everybody else. Like, what are those things where you might celebrate people or might do some sort of special moment for them? I'm kind of curious if you do that, just because I worked in companies where the birthday thing was a big deal, but we didn't care anything about the service anniversary because it was just became one more thing to keep track of. So everybody's got their own little piece of that. I'm just kind of curious what everyone else is doing there.
I have a fun story about service anniversaries to share quick. I worked at a company one time that just this team had kind of started this tradition where when it was your anniversary, you got a balloon, and one of those like giant number balloons with the number of years that you'd worked there. And so everybody around could see, and it was like a big conversation starter because you had this big giant floating balloon behind your chair.
With a number of years of service.
With the number of years of service.
That's really interesting.
Yep.
Because you're like, oh, you were here when this happened, right? This
Right.
is 20 milestone, or you were here, but when our logo was purple. That's a joke I always make with a friend of mine. Their company changed a couple years ago. And I'm like, I remember when you guys were purple. I still like call him back to that because it's a reminder. Like, I remember you when you were not big and special and important yet. You were
Yep.
just the new guys on the block. Can I ask you one more question that's kind of, if we segment everything else, I'll fire all that for a second. I just want to ask you a different question entirely, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You said you've had this kind of winding career that's touched on all these different things. I'd be curious to know if you could go back to your younger self and say, hey, by the way, you're going to be in analytics and measurement, HR one day, which may have surprised you probably if I'd go back now. Any advice or things you'd tell that younger self that might help prepare you for what's ahead or help you to overcome something or prevent a misstep, anything like that? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've gained so many transferable skills over the many roles that I've held. And I think going back, I would say, hey, this is not wasted time, right? Just because you're going to change careers, and like, I'll be honest, I'm sure I'm going to change careers 3 more times, right? Like, this is today's world. It gives you that flexibility. Internal mobility is just a part of cultures now in a way that it never was. It's now a career jungle gym, not a career ladder, right? Like the world is different. And so I always say, like, focus on those transferable skills. And when you're ready for something different, think about how all the things you already know apply to the next thing, right? And so absolutely, I love the many experiences that I've had. I'd say I could go back and do it differently. I could do it the same and just continue on this trajectory of trying new things and solving big, interesting problems and tying it all back to data and people.
I love that. I love the idea that none of that was wasted. Every step was important. And I think about that occasionally. I don't know if I've talked about it on summer school before, but when I was finishing college, I had an opportunity to do an internship, but it was unpaid and I was about to actually get married. I'm like, I can't take an unpaid internship for 3 months, but it was going to be with the healthcare system. I was going to move to all the different roles they had in the business. It was going to be really incredible. And I wonder sometimes what it would have been like if I had actually gone through that process versus choosing to work in a non-HR job just to pay the bills at that time. And I'm always curious, like, what would that have meant? What would it have been? But I don't know that I would change anything that's happened to me, right? Because it led me to where I am today. So thank you for that reminder of that. That's a really interesting perspective there. All right. So I've already mentioned at the beginning, but I'm going to mention it again here for all of you out there. You've heard from Hallie. Now you know why I follow and appreciate her, because she's got a great head on her shoulders, so much good insight around how we can support our people, how we can do that really well. I'll make sure her link to her profile is over here in the comments. You can all go and follow her and connect with her. Just tell her you saw her on summer school and you are her new biggest fan. She'd appreciate that. And thank you again to the team over at Goody for helping to put us together for this and for their support of this event. We're going to be giving some stuff away with the team at Goody later on in the event, so hang tight for that one. Stay tuned. We'll get you more details. Thank you again, Hallie, for joining me. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
To all of you out there, hang tight for more HR Summer School coming right up. I think I'm going to start saying that in my sleep. Hang tight for more summer school coming right up, because I say that probably at the end of every session, but it's a good thing. So why not? If you can have a tagline, run with it. I think the word I overused 2 years ago, or maybe last year, was awesome. I think I used it so many times. Someone was like, now they'd see my name associated with that forever and ever. Anyway. All right, we'll pick some winners. I said later in the event, and it is later technically. So we went ahead and grabbed some winners from people who were chiming in there in the session. We're also going to give some more away tomorrow, so hang tight for that. But really quickly, these have a little different process. So Nick at Goody is going to be the one to make sure. Yeah, thanks, George. Ben, also you. George is, Nick is going to make sure that everybody gets set on these. So reach out to Nick at On Goody. So Kevin, Jennifer, Christy, Brooklyn, Julie, Kevin, Laura, and Stacy. Number one, thank you for your comments, your ideas, your suggestions during that, because I saw some of you sharing some neat things that you tried or that had worked, or you're asking questions about it. So I grabbed you specifically because of that. And again, we're going to have a couple more people win tomorrow. And then I think even after the event, they're going to grab some more winners. So just stay tuned for that. They're all about recognizing and appreciating the community. And that's what that session was about, but it's also what we're about here at Summer School. So it was a great fit. So make sure y'all reach out to Nick. He'll get you set and squared away. All right. And we're going to dive right into our next session here. We have Caitlin, and then we're going to hear from Troy, and we're going to take a break, bring George back. I've got him locked in the closet over there for a minute. We're going to bring him back and have some conversation with him a little bit on some of his takeaways and things, because he's been running the chat and keeping up with all of you in the conversations. So let's hear from Caitlin MacGregor over at Plum. So she's going to talk to us about some of the vision that she has for a workplace where every single person can thrive. And I know that probably excites all of you, because it makes me pumped, not just for myself and for the work I get to do, but for my kids too. So there's a lot of opportunity there in the future as well for this to lead to some incredible outcomes at work, and maybe people actually getting up and excited to go to work. One of the friends that I've made over the years, she's running this project right now for women leaders, and she calls it Love Sunday Nights, because she said so many of them have grown to hate Sunday nights because it means the work day is right around the corner. So she's trying to help them work through how to love Sunday nights. And that picture is stuck in my head really well. So we're going to hear from Caitlin MacGregor here on what it takes to start loving that and how to thrive. To another session here at summer school. I know that you've been taking a lot of notes. You've been getting a lot of good takeaways and everything else as we've been going through some of the amazing sessions so far already, and there's more to come. But one of the things that I really want to explore a little bit here in the conversation with Caitlin is not just looking at people for what they can do right now, but for the potential they have in the future. And the way I put it to someone actually the other day, I was talking about this. I said, imagine if you treated the relationships in your life like, I will only give you something if you give me something of value right now, which seems so silly to say that. Like, I'll be your friend, but only if you're my friend first, or I'll help you only if you help me first. And sometimes it feels like that at work, right? And the value of focusing on this potential piece is, I'm going to go all in because I know that you have more value than you think you have in the future. And so we're going to dive into some of those kinds of things in the conversation, understand how Caitlin and the team at Plum are helping companies to understand this more about their people, both on the hiring side, on the internal mobility side, all those kind of fun things. It's going to be just a blast. Caitlin, I'm so glad you're here with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. And hi, everybody doing summer school.
All right. It's probably, I don't know about you, but first time at summer school, probably, right? We're glad to have you. You can be the freshman for the year. We'll let you roll with that. Before we get into some of the fun stuff, would you take a second and tell the audience a little more about who you are, what you do?
So my name's Caitlin MacGregor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plum. And we quantify human potential. We take the best in class science for industrial organizational psychology, and we marry that with technology that puts the user first. How do we make sure that candidate and that employee gets to be seen and heard and understood, and give them data to empower their journey, and then use that data for employers to help make better talent decisions through the entire life cycle, from hiring through to onboarding and internal mobility and professional development and identifying leadership potential. We like to say it's the missing data in 2022 to actually know who the human is and how to optimize them and really understand those innate transferable talents and what makes somebody exceptional.
I never stopped to think about it this way, but when we think about what we know about people at work, we've got a lot of the data points, right? Their job title, their pay rate. We got those things. We may even know some of their actual abilities based on other stuff they've done, but usually it's this big black hole information about someone, like what we can actually know deeply about them, and actually not just use it in a negative way, but how do we make sure that they're using the things they're great at, the things that they're excited about, the things that make them really tick. So that's what's so exciting to me about this conversation. But before we get into some of those things, I actually just want to ask you kind of a broad thing. Like you're incredibly smart. Anyone that listens for a few minutes is going to figure that one out. You could have done anything. Why Plum? Why this focus on potential of all the things you could have done?
I think there's a combination of things. The first one is that I built 2 businesses for other people. My first job outside of teaching English in China, I got hired by somebody to start up and run a business from scratch. He handled the sales and finance, was around a fraction of the time. He hired me to let me build this business for him from scratch and just got out of my way, never put a ceiling on me, and just let me go. But I had no experience building a business from scratch. I had no experience in the industry. I had no experience whatsoever that should have given him any indication that he should have hired me and taken a risk on me. But he said that I had chutzpah, saw something in me and let me do it. And I succeeded at it. And it was through that process of building this first business successfully that I looked back and went, holy shit, I'm an entrepreneur. And I think about what would have happened if he hadn't seen that potential in me. how long would it have taken in my career to realize that was my true calling? And would I have potentially missed an opportunity? Because it's easy to take big risks early in your career before you have family and other financial responsibilities. And it shouldn't be left to chance and or the type of indicators that gave him comfort. I really, truly found in the second business that I was running, I got exposed to industrial organizational psychology. I had to pay a very expensive consultant to use the psychometric assessment that they had designed to utilize it on everybody, but to also get the interpretation of the results. It was very, very expensive, but I kept finding these incredible diamonds in the rough. I never would have interviewed, let alone hired, if I hadn't had this data. And I said, how are business owners supposed to make the most critical decision in their business, making sure they have the right people in the right seats? How could they possibly do this without this data? And so I was looking to then, after building 2 businesses for other people, start my own, and saw an opportunity to democratize access to this highly predictive data. What has been broken about psychometric assessments is that the people that have put it out there are academics that don't know how to make it user-friendly, don't know how to scale it, or consultants that, frankly, it is in their self-interest to keep it expensive, to keep it so that you can't understand it without them. And a lot of the technology solutions that have come out over the years, they don't get the science. They don't understand that it starts with getting the science right. We work with Whirlpool and Citibank and Scotiabank, massive companies globally. Bloomberg, they have to have credible, valid science. They need to have that objective data. They can't cut corners. And so getting the science right, but also, more importantly, what's in it for the candidate and the employee? How can we make it something that they benefit from? And I have not come across another assessment that was designed for that individual to get benefit from the process. And so I saw a gap, and I've spent a decade committing my life to trying to really flip the equation. This data is 4 times more accurate than a resume. 4 times predicting on-the-job performance. That means better quality of hire, and that means also greater retention. And yet we're waiting until an interview and some gut decisions to decide. And the best people probably never even made it to the interview. And I saw an opportunity to screen people in that were currently being left out of the equation. And frankly, what's the point of me running any future business for myself or somebody else if I don't have Plum to use to be successful in that business?
I want to pull all these things apart in there. Goodness, there's so much good stuff in there. One of the other speakers I had a chance to interview with, the audience you'll hear from Kellee Webb. She's the CHRO, but one of the things that she talked about was when she picked someone, she was like, I'm not picking the person that has all the right boxes on the resume, because who knows if they're going to work with our team, if they're going to have the right attitude, if they're going to have the right. She talked about having to try to do that, and she's did the hard way, trying to filter for those things. But there's no resume that says, hey, this is how I work with others, right? They all have team player and all the other buzzwords and thrown in, but no one's going to say, hey, I'm not really a great team player. I don't really fit this thing. Here's the way I work best and everything else. And so I love having that different lens or perspective on people that really helps us see who they are, to know when we can pick them, either for, as we're talking about, kind of as a candidate side, but also the fun for me is doing that when they're already employed and saying, hey, we see you, we see what you have to offer, and we want to recreate that great feeling of being wanted when we offered you the first time. We want to create that experience all over again by saying, we now want you somewhere else because we think you're so valuable. We'd love to have you contribute somewhere else. We're not going to make you do it, but you get the choice. And to recreate that feeling for people, that's something that many companies are trying to figure out, like, how do we keep people? How do we retain them? Like, hey, make them feel like you actually want them. I mean, that may be kind of out there, but it seems relatively simple to me that we can create this feeling in people that they're desired, they're appreciated. We see what you have to offer, and we'd like to leverage that again. And that, again, maybe it's too simple for people. They want that, more difficult, really hard thing.
It isn't that difficult. The thing that we've missed in everything that we've been building and all the data that we've been collecting is that there's still the fundamental starting point with how we understand people today comes from 2 sources. This 8.5 by 11 representation of somebody, the resume and the keywords that are in that resume, and the job descriptions, which are a whole bunch of other set of keywords. There isn't an ATS, there isn't a job board on the planet that isn't utilizing those keywords to match people. And the problem is that what is missing is actually understanding what makes somebody jump out of bed in the morning, excited about the work they're going to do, and what makes them finish the day going, I absolutely crushed it. I was amazing today. I did something for my team, for my company that no one else could have done. The best version of myself showed up today. I was amazing. And I just feel incredibly fulfilled at the end of the day. We did this exercise recently. You know, you asked me why did I start Plum? And I told you why I started, but the reason why a decade in that I'm still building it and I won't stop until I can get much closer to this future vision that we have is, you know, I've got a 6-year-old and 11-year-old. And when I think about what I want for them when they enter the workforce, I don't care if they're a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. I don't care if they want to be a customer success manager and they're going to go on a job board and search CSM and see a whole bunch of lists of jobs. I don't care. What I care about is, are they going to be happy, fulfilled, and thriving in their career? And I don't see tools that allow them to go out and understand which jobs their innate talents are aligned to. You know, if there's somebody that gets a sense of self-worth through thinking about out-of-the-box ideas or aligning people to a future vision or working on a team to get a task done, whatever it is that fills their bucket, there isn't anything saying which jobs at which companies in which areas actually would give them an opportunity to use those innate talents. And we have built a system that does that, but we built it from a top-down perspective where today employers can use it to screen every single job applicant that applies for the job, or they can use it on every employee, like Citel is using it in 26 countries globally on their existing employees to help with professional development and internal mobility. But what we've realized is that the future is really this employee-driven, candidate-driven, individual-led experience, and that we need to take our technology and add to this bottom-up experience that enables in the future, you know, my kids to find the jobs that'll make them the happiest and the most fulfilled and allow them to thrive, not just in the job that they're going to first enter the workforce into, but every step of their career. And some of the most amazing examples of our success have been in people transferring into jobs that they never would have imagined they would have loved until it popped up that they were a 91 match into this job that didn't match their background. And somebody based on their Plum score said, I'm going to give you an opportunity. And it ended up being, you know, lightning in a bottle.
I'm still hung back on the comment about your kids a minute ago where you talked about them, because one of the things I've done with ours, especially the older ones, they're 11 as well, by the way, so I'm right there with you. One of the things we talk about is what work looks like, what those relationships look like, and what it takes to really enjoy what you do. Like you're talking about a minute ago, that's your dream for your kids, and the same for mine as well. So it's fun to hear that parallel. One of the things I want to ask you about, though, because a big part of that isn't just the job you're put into, but the leaders you get to work with and things like that. And one of the terms you used in a conversation recently, we were just chatting and you used this term relational leader. And I'd love you to talk about how that fits into this picture of someone really doing what they were designed to do, doing what they love, right? Those kind of things, because I think that is a big part of this. I'm imagining that putting some of these things we're talking about here, this insight, this information into the hands of those leaders, they're already good at this, but that probably makes them like supercharged, I would imagine. I don't know if that's the right term or not, but run with that a little bit if you don't mind. Talk about that, the power of that relational leader when it comes to these relationships.
So leaders come into existing teams all the time, or leaders are there and have brand new team members that come in. And before the pandemic, when we all used to be in an office together, it could easily take 9 months in person to start to get an understanding of somebody's strengths and weaknesses, to understand where you're getting the best version of your direct report, and to foster enough of a relationship where you could have those vulnerable conversations about supporting them in order to optimize them in the best way. And now that most companies are remote or hybrid, and we're not necessarily getting that face-to-face opportunity, it can take even longer, not just for the manager and the employee, but also the rest of the team. And, you know, in HR terms, we talk about that storming, norming, and performing, this curve of getting to know each other before we get the real performing and gelling of a team. with Plum, the second that they apply for a job, or they're just an employee that goes and takes this 20 to 25 minute universal assessment that's just about the person, agnostic of the job, we immediately, the individual as well as the manager, can see specifically what this person's top talents are. Is it innovation or communication or execution? But the competencies and the individual behaviors that drive the person, meaning that they're naturally driven, they naturally get a sense of self-worth by doing these behaviors, which means if somebody naturally likes checking off a to-do list, you don't have to micromanage them and worry that something's going to fall through the cracks. They're on top of that more than you could ever be. But there's going to be other things, because they're putting so much time and attention into that, there's going to be other things that are draining. And what we keep forgetting is that people are like our phone batteries. If they are running at less than 20%, you are constantly worrying that all of a sudden they'll have burnout and not be able to be there for you to do the work. And that's the worst possible outcome. So how do we as managers ensure that people are self-aware and that we're aware of what are those things that are draining them? And are we optimizing our team, giving the most innovative assignments to the most innovative people, giving the most task-oriented execution assignments to the ones that are going to naturally make sure nothing slips through the cracks? The ones that work on teams, how are we going to make sure that they get an opportunity to collaborate on something? As a manager, understanding, it really is, if you've seen the movie Moneyball, it's Moneyball for hiring. How do you optimize based on where people are going to thrive and outperform their peers? And be really open and transparent that it's not that somebody can't do something. It's not really a weaknesses. It's really about, is it just more draining and taxing and exhausting? It just takes them longer, and it's not something that comes as natural. And is that the best use of that resource, to constantly be putting them into that role?
I'm just picturing this. Again, you talked about vision a little bit ago. I'm picturing this vision where my kids can go to work and their leaders see them not just for the title or the handful of skills that they're renting, essentially, for the duration of their employment there, but for the actual things that make them tick, the things that they do well, the things that make them really their zone of genius, essentially, the place where they work the very best. And that excites me on so many levels, because I tell everybody when I'm coaching young people getting, graduating from college, things like that. I talk to a lot of HR classes, things like that. I'm telling them, hey, the first job or two, you're going to learn what you like, but more importantly, you're going to learn all the things that you don't do very well, right? It'd be really handy to have something like this to say, hey, by the way, here's your red flags to watch out for. If the job requires you to do all this and your score low here, probably don't spend a lot of time on that, right? And there's so many good things here. The relational leader, the piece of the leadership piece of this is it gives them some language to have a common foundation for, right, the drainers, right, and things like that. And you can just talk about these things in a way that makes sense. So instead of it feeling, as you said earlier, some of the challenges, feeling academic or feeling very, disconnected from the real practical work. No, it's, hey, here's how that thing aligns right with the things you're doing every day. There's so much to this. And I want to ask you like 10 more questions, but I have to be respectful of time. So if someone wants to know more about Plum, I think you actually have a link. We'll pop it in the chat for them to take their own Plum assessment, figure out what your own things are out there, everybody. So I want everybody to go look in the chat, take that Plum assessment. We're actually going to come back and let you tell us some of the things in there that you found that were interesting or relevant to you. And we're going to pick a couple of those people to give you a prize, send a prize out to people. So go and take that assessment. It doesn't cost you anything, a little bit of time, and you're going to learn some really fun things about it. Anything else that you want to point them to, Caitlin, while we're talking about how to connect?
We're unlocking everyone's talent guide, which is your professional development guide. So that's something that gets unlocked post-hire. And so when you complete your Plum profile, you see your top 3 talents, and then click talent guide and talent breakdown and see all 10 of your talents. And there's resources in there to help you with your own professional development. And we'd love to share more about the success that we've had with our clients throughout the entire life cycle.
Okay, wonderful. Goodness, I'm so excited with this. I can't wait to see everybody coming back and sharing some of your key talents, what things pop up in there. It'll be a ton of fun for us to compare notes as a community on that. Thank you again, Caitlin, for joining us. This has been such a fun time, and I've got some good takeaways and notes over here. I know everybody else has as well. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Absolutely. To everybody else out there, hang tight. Hang tight for more summer school as usual. Goodness. So I posted that in the chat a second ago. So the link is there. go complete your profile, share your strengths back with us. And by the way, George is doing that right now. So in a few minutes, we're going to hear from him on his strengths after we finish this session with Troy. We take our break. We'll hear what George's strengths are, if he has any. No, sorry, that was a low blow, my friend. Sorry. We'll hear what George's strengths are, and we'll use that as a part of the conversation. Some of you grab that link. You don't have to do it right now if you don't want to, but save that, go take that. The team has unlocked that for all of you. So you don't just get your results back, but also the guide to help you think about how to leverage the strengths that you have. And so what's fun about that is I've heard from several people, I've even seen some in the chat, people saying, hey, I'm looking for work right now. I'm looking for a new company. My company doesn't value the work that HR does. So I need to find one that does. Or I just left a toxic culture. I'm looking for my next adventure. And so for those of you especially, that's a great way to do that. So much fun. Thank you, Caitlin, for being a great shining example of how we can all thrive at work. All right, we're going to jump over into this conversation with Troy. And again, it's going to be a little bit of shift from that last one because we're going to talk about some of the important things that matter in organizational health. Yes, organizational health. Sometimes it's physical health. Sometimes it's emotional health. Sometimes that's right, all these kinds of things. We're going to talk about those pieces of it through the lens of what you need to do, how you need to approach your CEO, your CFO to get them to support these kind of things. And so what I love about this is we've heard so many good things during the event so far. And some of you were like, oh, I like this idea, but how do I go get them to buy in on it? And so Troy from Wanido is going to give you some insights on that based on the conversations he's having with CEOs on a regular basis at the clients they work with. So he'll share some of those things. He'll open that playbook up and you'll get some good insights. Transparently, when I was with Troy, we ended up going a little bit longer, and I was like, okay, I'll just trim it. No worries. I couldn't trim anything because I felt like I was going to take some incredible insights out of it. So we'll dive into this one. Then we're going to take a break together. So let's jump on in and hear from Troy over at Wanido on how to speak the language of your CEO. Just a ton of fun for me to pick up these new ideas and to give some encouragement, to get some suggestions on what's working, what's not, and things like that. And so this next conversation will be another one of those for you, where we're going to dive into some things that you probably have some general awareness of, but I am going to ask our guest here to go deeper, to give us more examples, to be very practical in this conversation so that we can all get some good takeaways as we go about our day. So with that said, Troy, so excited to have you here from the team over at Wanido. You guys are supporting the event, and I'm really pumped to dive into this. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. We are as well. We've been following your work for a couple of years now, and it's fantastic. So we just appreciate being part of the event and doing what we can to help change this industry.
So wonderful. Well, before we get into some of the fun stuff that we're going to talk about today, would you take a minute and just give the audience a little more about who you are and what you do, please?
You bet. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Minnesota, went to school out at Notre Dame in Indiana, moved back to Minneapolis in 2000. And since then, Ben, I've really been in this industry. I've been on the vendor side for many years. I've been on the brokerage side. I've been part of some product build outs. My last endeavor was actually building out human capital management system, from payroll to ben admin to HRIS to recruiting. We had our own EDI tool that we could flip data in and out, built on one data set. So that was super cool. Really learned a lot. And I know we'll get into a little bit about the discussion of why I want to do. So it's going to be a fun conversation with you, Ben. And an interesting fact about me that few of us Minnesotans have is I am an avid sheller. So oddly enough, shelling, 5 years ago, one of my friends said they went to Sanibel and shelled. And I honestly kind of chuckled a little bit, but since then we've been going down there 4 years, and going to Sanibel and shelling is one thing I love to do, which is maybe a little bit of an oddity, but I really do enjoy it.
Okay, so what in the world is shelling? I'm not getting this. I don't know what that is.
Well, there's a lot to it. Fireside chat. It's Sanibel, where it's off the coast of Fort Myers, and where it's positioned, it's where all the shells kind of roll in. And when you start understanding the shells that are hard to find and the size and if they're chipped and all sorts of stuff. So my family is right in the water with me. We probably spend 6 to 8 hours a day shelling in the water. So it's a unique thing that frankly I never thought that I would be involved with, but it's very relaxing and it is very fun.
Really neat. I can think of the times where we're out with the kids at a beach or whatever else, somewhere where that's they're all around and they're always hunting for the one that's cool, or for them it's just anything novel is exciting there. But there is a discipline apparently.
And Sanibel is, I think it's always ranked in the top 3 shelling capitals of the world. So that's the other thing is, I mean, it's not I get a lot of people like in that too, Ben, on like, well, we get shells here or there, but Sanibel is just different. I'll tell you that. You get some big shells, unique shells, and there's a lot of them. So it's pretty cool.
Very fun. All right. Well, goodness, I do want to sit there for a little bit and talk more on those things because I'd love to know more. But we're going to get into some fun
Great.
stuff with the audience. By the way, if anybody else out there is a sheller, if you do that or you enjoy getting the chance to do that, I just love to hear from you in the chat. By the way, because I didn't know shelling like was a verb. I didn't know it was a thing. So I just thought.
Frankly, I didn't either, Ben. I didn't either.
You learn that. You learn those lessons. Interesting.
So I wanted just quickly where we kind of fit in the market is what we're looking at is organizational health. I know you'll ask that, Ben, but we've looked at this in a unique way of really understanding the employee well-being, the true kind of cycle of that your health could affect your finances and could affect who you are at work and at home. They're all really interconnected. And by really looking at that, we think that's the way of looking at organizational health and giving the root causes of that too, Ben, has been super insightful, not only to help those employees, get better with themselves, but obviously getting that data back. It's going to be de-identified and anonymous, but getting that data back to the employer is really that insight they need. So that's to kind of finish the question about what I do day to day. That's what we're building here at Wanido.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a great way to dive into the conversation because the concept of having data and bringing that to the table and using that to enable better conversations is one of the things that we have really pushed on here from a HR summer school perspective and some of the other education that I get to do. I've pushed on that because anybody that knows me for more than 5 minutes, like, okay, he's the data guy. And so I had to come from a background though of being very relational, being very people focused to figure out that right balance between the people side and the data side in order to be more effective as an HR leader in the time that I was working in the trenches. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you just to kind of kick this off a little bit because of that unique perspective that you bring is I talk to people leaders just like the ones listening into our conversation right now all the time that are saying, hey, I'm trying to talk to my leadership. I'm trying to talk to my boss, but there feels like this tug of war between HR and the business, right? Supporting the people or supporting the bottom line. And it feels like there's this tug of war and like there has to be a winner. And I don't know if there needs to be a winner there, but I'd love to get your take on that because you get a chance to talk with a bunch of both of those audiences and you may have a good perspective there.
Yeah, so I'm with you, Ben. My whole method is based on data. So the way we looked at it at the issue, Ben, is I think we all have seen the data roll out now that 70% of employees are disengaged, 40% of employees or the population is unhealthy or sick, and 50% are paycheck to paycheck. And I think it's also now that we all know that it doesn't vary by how much you make, where you live. I mean, people get sick, unfortunately, or people, you might make a lot of money, but their spouse loses their job. So now they're in a financial hardship. Mm-hmm. So I think the key and the way to look through the issue is kind of the first principle way of thinking of, well, what's driving that? So when we look at building out a solution, or when you look to other solutions, you got to figure out what are the root causes of disengagement? Like, what are the root causes of why people aren't healthy or living paycheck to paycheck? In our minds, that's the only way that you can make that, you call it the HR soft side or like the hard side, the stats, to kind of bring those together. So whether we like it or not, when you look underneath the hood of your employees, they're struggling with this. And the goal, I think, of our industry is we need to alleviate that. We need to start bringing in solutions and products that are getting to the root of the disengagement, the health and the finance struggles that our employees are going through, because I look at it as simple as nobody wants to be disengaged at work, right? I mean, nobody wants to work somewhere where they're not feeling appreciated, they're not connected, they don't have friends at work. Nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to live paycheck to paycheck. So our way of thinking, I think the industry is moving towards this way, is, well, we need to figure out the root and then figure out the solution in order to solve that problem. So that's really the way that I believe, or at least I want to do, that we're driving the industry forward, is really based off data and fixing the root in order to fix the bigger problem, which are those numbers we all read about almost every single day.
Well, for those, so we take that, and then I'm putting myself in the shoes of some of the people listening in right now, right? At the end of the day, they've got to go back and be accountable for something. And so I'd love to run a little experiment with you here live with them, with the audience here listening in behind us. I'd love to run a little experiment here and have you help me understand this conversation the way you would present it to someone who's in our audience, right? The HR leaders, the talent leaders, the people who are responsible for the people side of the business. And then after we do that, I want to pause, and then I want us to do the same thing, but if you were addressing a CFO or a CEO. And I would love to hear, and I want the audience to listen in to both of these two different parallel tracks, because the way that you talk about this to us is probably going to be different. And if that's the case, for those of you listening into this, I want you to take some notes on the things that he does when Troy talks about this from the CFO, CEO side, because those are going to be good suggestions for you when you're trying to figure out, okay, yes, I believe in the value of organizational health. We need to have our people healthy, capable, engaged. Now, how do I translate that into words that my leadership actually will invest in? So that's what I'm hoping to get out of this. Does that sound fair to you, Troy?
That sounds like a fun exercise. From the HR side, when I put myself in our clients' shoes, we hear a lot is that they know things are happening. There's just not a way to put the data behind it or the reasonings behind it. As an example, when they send out communications, are they tracking a number of the people are opening it? What's the engagement rate? Are they taking different products or services they have to date to start trying to measure the impact? Because I think of what a lot of our industry has been really, really good at, frankly, is just throwing stuff on the wall or throwing a dart to see if it works. And what we're doing, or our philosophy is, you need a lot of that data to back it up. I've been on plenty of calls where the HR person will say like, hey, this is why it's hard for us to recruit. This is why it's hard for us to retain. But they don't have, when they go to present it to their CEO or CFO, they don't have the data. So it's that uncomfortable position I know a lot of us are in of, hey, I think this is what's going on, or this exit interview just happened. But that way of positioning it to some extent has got us to where we're at still today. And that we need to do as an industry, again, a better job from the HR standpoint of really measuring everything we have to build that business case out. And that's when we look at, again, our way of thinking, Ben, I just went through of why are people disengaged? Why are people unhealthy? There are ways and tools to get out there to give you the data that you need in order to make your case back to the C-suite, if you will, or your boss on why you need, say, a different vendor or service or whatever is going on in your organization. The reason, the root of why it's happening is through data. And that data is living there. It's just a way for you to try to find it, or obviously to other services as well. So is that kind of
that's a good shot for the HR audience, right?
Yeah.
To get, okay, that's going to sound familiar. That's going to sound pretty comfortable for us, probably, to know that
good.
That's the conversation that we would have. That's the way we present it, things like that. Now,
kind of presentation to that part of the company is honestly probably the side I spend the most on. And why that is we've spent, or the industry now has a lot of data around this idea that the soft side of HR and the hard side of HR. So soft skills versus hard skills. And it's always been presented in a way of getting to the CFO or CEO or CFO. Here's our retention rate. Here's our turnover rate. We need a new X vendor to help with this. And obviously then what we're finding is that is just a stat, a point in time. It doesn't tell the why. And when we start getting into talking to the CFO and the CEO, they historically think in terms of data or the reasoning behind.
Let's press play on the version where you talk to the CEO or the CFO.
Yeah.
Right? I'm coming to you, or you've come to us, doesn't matter which direction it came up, but we want to have a conversation about, we're having some issues on the people side. How would you present that to that audience?
Yeah, so the CEO, CFO items, and the best analogy I can kind of give you, Ben, and the audience is, if you think about it in kind of I think an example is, forever the CFO has had a tool where they can go to the CEO and say, okay, here's our financials the last quarter. CEO can walk through or look through to figure out what's this, why did this happen? And there's always an answer. Same thing on the CEO side is they can go in and look at service, a number of calls we got, chat bots, a number of new clients, lost clients. The operational side, there's always been software to tell you that story day to day, week to week. And the easiest example is obviously on the marketing side as well. You know, whether you HubSpot or Salesforce, I can go in there today and figure out our pipeline. I can figure out percent of closing. I can see our email, opens emails. There's been data. And where our markets again struggling is to tell the story of why you need to have that data. You need to be able to use a system to show the people side. And the other kind of ironic part of this, Ben, is you think about the amount of money companies spend in salary and benefits, but yet the CEO, CFO, and most of our organizations have no insight to the why. Like, what do they like working here for? What do they dislike? How can they improve it? That is the value when you say people matter most, or the people are the most important asset to our company. Well, you got to start treating them that way. And usually the answers you're looking for to solve a lot of your problems, those employees have. And you just now need to figure out a platform that is going to be based off behavior and data to tell that story. So now the CEO or CFO can look at it and say, oh, now there's a very clear line of this location is doing much better to this location. And with the human side or the people side of the data, that will finish the story out. And of course, we have a lot of tools on our side, Ben and audience, to do that, but that is where it's a very much more comfortable sell to leadership if you're asking or presenting a story based off data, not just by thinking. It's been fun to kind of to figure through that, and it's been a lot of just reading and data and pulling data, but it's been a fun exercise.
I think we're going to break a record in this session for the number of times we've mentioned data, probably, but I think that's probably a good thing for everybody out there. I see this, for some of you, it may feel like a foreign language, but I see it more like a muscle, right? Everyone's got it, and yours depends on the times you strengthen it. If we use it, if we do it regularly, we're going to build strength in that data-focused muscle. That doesn't mean you have to suddenly start learning, how to program in R or all these other kind of crazy things. No. It's just, I need to be able to ask good questions. I need to be able to have the tools that give me that information and then translate that back into what our leaders care about. One of the parallels I was thinking of as you were talking a minute ago on that, Troy, is one of the recruiting metrics I hate the most because everybody uses it, but it gives you the least insight into what's actually happening, is time to fill. Time to fill is a range calculation from when it opened to when it closed, but all the actual work that you did is completely disregarded. Whether that person is a quality hire, disregarded, right? Any effort or anything else is completely wiped away. It's just how long. Top number, bottom number, subtract that out, and that's our range, our time to fill. And that's all I can think of is we have that kind of data, right, on our hands from an HR perspective. We know when someone started, we know what they're paid, we know, right, what benefits they have. But beyond that, we don't know the things that are engaging them, driving their behaviors, or helping them to feel more connected to the company, or the flip side of any of those things. We don't have that kind of data usually on hand to help us guide that and help us to figure out what to do next. And so any guess, I think you used the dartboard example earlier, where any guess that we're going to make is just basically random chance if that's going to hit the right thing on the dartboard or not. That's the challenge that I see so many of these leaders dealing with.
So when I use the term data, I should almost use it as in terms of behavior. So this isn't if you're listening, obviously as HR, it's something you need to implement and start doing on your own. It's in our way of thinking through social interactions and all that. That's kind of, we call it tags or clicks. That's where that data is coming from. So when you start thinking it through like this, Ben, where companies could get 85% month-to-month engagement rate. So on average, to the best of our ability through best practices, you're going to get 400 insight or behavior points per employee per year. So that's roughly 40,000 insight behavior points and 100 life group that you've never had. And what's really cool is you flow through that, and it's what we know through psychology and just science, that by doing the way to connect people and interact and get feedback and suggestions, all that kind of fun stuff, by tying that all into that interconnectivity, we now know that companies that are focusing on employee well-being and get back to that CEO discussion, is we know here at Wanido, and we work with a partner called orghealth.io, that there's about a 4.65% opportunity cost of payroll. So as we talked earlier ago, Ben, we started looking at salary and benefits as they're going up and up. When you start looking at actually looking for caring for your employees' well-being and the actual downstream from presenteeism and absenteeism and work comp claims and medical claims and all that jazz, we're getting all that data, people are using it, and the net result, for lack of a better term, is opportunity cost of 4.65%. And ours is actually lower. A very large social media company, they came out with a 5.81% opportunity cost. So that's kind of that discussion too, to tie it back, Ben, to the earlier discussion of when CEOs start hearing that the soft side of HR, and caring for people is really, really good for their companies. That's when their ears pop up, and that's when the CFO really leans in for more question on, wow, this is really impactful. We should really look at doing this.
I've loved the chance to explore some of these things in the discussion so far, right? Really, really understanding this and plumbing the depths of this, because I want everyone listening here. I hope you took some good notes on this, on suggestions on how to talk to your other leaders, your other counterparts around the business side, because you are a business practitioner who happens to focus on people, just like finance, the business practitioner who happens to focus on finances and numbers and accounting. But I've made the statements with a little bit of grit in my voice for the last couple of years that we often, as employers, have more awareness of the property inside the building. If you have an office, right, I can tell you when that was purchased. I can tell you what the depreciated cost is. I can tell you where it's located based on, the tracking. But beyond someone's job title, we don't know what else they're capable of, or what's interesting to them, or what their status is as an employee, if they're going to stick around or not. And all those kinds of things, we need to have those at our fingertips so we can make better decisions. So Troy, the time went very quickly, but this has been so much fun diving into this. And thanks for putting up with some a little bit of role play conversation with me here, because I think that's going to be valuable for everybody listening in to help them know how to go back and reach out to their own leadership in a more practical way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. And we've gone through some pretty heavy stuff, but from an easeability standpoint, it is really looking to the root of what your employees really are needing and wanting, and letting you, as obviously HR practitioners, hearing that, seeing that through data, and building that case back to your executives. It just makes kind of every one of our clients' lives a heck of a lot easier, and trying to accomplish what most of our HR practitioners want to do in their day-to-day, not just put out fires and do things like that all day. They really want to be advocates. And I think in setting up in the right way, Ben, there are companies like Wanido out there that can help you do that.
Wonderful. All right. One thing I forgot almost, I didn't look at my notes, but I remember that I had asked you about this before we started recording, is I actually want to give away a couple of books. So for those of you who are listening in here right now, I want you to think about the conversations that Troy and I've been having. I want you to think about a couple of the ways, a couple of those buttons you're going to push when you go talk to your CFO or your CEO, when you're trying to get them to support the people side. Hopefully right now it's easier than ever, because companies are trying to figure out how to do that well, and they're realizing the business impact of either supporting or not supporting your people. So for those of you listening into this, go ahead and pop something in the chat. One of the big takeaways you got from Troy, or something important from the session you think you're going to go and put into practice starting tomorrow. Put a couple of those in there. We'll go ahead and run through those people who are adding those comments and grab a couple of winners of one of our books here we're giving away for summer school. So thank you again, Troy. Appreciate you and the Wanido team for supporting HR Summer School and for supporting the community. It means a lot to us, and I'm glad to have had the chance to chat with you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. Everybody else out there, hang tight for more HR Summer School coming right up. All right, George, I'm going to bring you back, my friend. Okay. So I haven't got to hear from you for a few minutes. It's been calm out over here. So while I'm getting the last couple of prize winners listed, I'd love to hear from you. What kind of takeaways do you have? We've had a couple good speakers, a lot of good content across not just the data side, which warms my heart. All of you know that, and I'm already seeing the comments in here. But also hearing some good things on thriving at work and things like that. So what have been the takeaways for you, George?
Yeah, so man, it's been a lot of good information, Ben. I think as we start out with Kellee, one of the things that really stuck out is hire for attitude and train for skills. I'll always add to that, saying you should always hire for integrity and character, right? Hire good people with good integrity, good in character, and then train them for what you want them to do within the company and the organization. We have to remember with diversity and inclusion that many people don't come with a gift or a skill. For instance, I was not always a giving person. I was not always a person who loved to serve other people. That's something that is taught, and once it's taught within a culture of an organization, then it can be taught, right? So I'm gonna say it again. Once you teach something, then it brings upon that person to be able to grab a hold of it, right? I taught something, now they have caught it. Some people give for the wrong reasons. And I think when you have a team and you're bringing that in, some of the things that Kellee was saying is really, make sure we're doing the right thing for the right purpose. Because, for instance, when we talk about giving, right, some people can give for the wrong reasons. And I always say it's okay to be seen giving, but you should never give to be seen, right? It's okay to be seen giving, but you should never give to be seen. And so servant leadership was huge. On that piece, valuing people, the humility, listening, adding a line of trust within the workplace, a safe place of caring, that people know that you truly care. And it's not because you want to care for them for profit, but you want to care for them for a purpose. You want to make them better. So I loved everything about that. I believe the chat ended with empathy, which I believe we all need. At the end of the day, we're at HR summer school. We're in the HR field. And it's time for us to remember that we have to put the H, human, let's be that in all phases, the good, bad, and the ugly, and be that resource. There's one key word that I pull out of resource, and that's our, right? Human, our resource. And we have to be that. And then you moved over to the next one with Hallie, and that was awesome as well, as we talked about recognizing your team, and making sure the team understand that they are important, they feel valued, and really reflecting that in every way. I think the key point on that is that you got to be able to speak their language. We go back to yesterday when we talk about how well do we know our people, how well do we know our team, because some people love the spotlight. They want the recognition. They don't mind the hand clap, the huge audience and special recognition. There's some people that just want to do what they do best and be in their room, be in their little small corner. An email will work, a letter will work, a card will work, right? A gift card. Extra money, maybe, hey, incentivize me. One of the things that I saw in the chat was somebody said, for their company gives PTO for their birthdays. And so that, that type of recognition goes a long way when you know your people in all areas. And so, and then obviously with Plum, we can talk about my results. I shared them with you, Ben. We can talk about that if you want.
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead and read off for the audience if you don't mind. I'm trying to pull it up really quickly. Read off your 3 strengths that came back for you, if you have those in front of you.
Yeah. So my 3 strengths came back, and my top results, what I really thought was interesting. My top one was conflict resolution. This is something that we have to realize when people in the chat, we're talking about data, not taking the human, we're talking about data, and it's that fight, right? I want to keep human in it. I don't understand what data does. I feel like it's taking away human touch. And it's not true. For this right here, if you knew me 10 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, conflict resolution would not be a top 3 in my book. And so I had to learn that and be good at examining issues from multiple viewpoints. That's something that kind of I was taught and then I caught, and it's something that I do love now. The other one was communication. This is something I try to strive. Sometimes I'm over communicative, and I over communicate with people. So it drives people nuts at times. Because I'll ask the same question. I repeat it over and over. One, not necessarily because I don't want to make sure they heard me, but 2, make sure I understood their response. And so being able to speak and be able to convey a message was important as well for that one. Then my last one, and I used to be a good salesperson. I don't know how great I am now. I feel like there's a lot of competition out there, but my third one was persuasion. Very good at understanding people, motivations, their feelings, knowing how to motivate others and really challenge them. If you knew me January 1, the New Year's resolutions and all those things, Ben, I actually resigned from being a motivational speaker. I no longer want to be referred to as motivating because I feel like that's something we have to have inward. But I love inspiring people. I know that's one of our key things in HR summer schools, to inspire. And so I like the word inspiration versus motivation, because motivation it's like gas. And right now gas is very expensive and it doesn't get you far. Motivation doesn't get you far, man. And it's like a drug. You always need it. When the motivation should be that person you see in the mirror every day. Your motivation should be your first and your last name and who you are and what you do, right? So my motivation is to make sure that George Rogers means something. If today is my last day, George Rogers is my motivation. That name means something, not just for my sake, but because of the people that are connected to me, because of my family, that means something to me. And so persuasion was the last one, being able to sway, the thinking and behaviors of individuals. But man, I tell you this, and I'll end. This Plum thing, it challenged me on a lot of different areas because there's some tough things to say. Hey, this is least, this is the most, and yeah, I struggled.
Oh, good. I was going to say, I hope so. I was about to say, I hope someone's recording what George is saying. I was like, oh yeah, we are recording this a minute ago because you were in the flow there for a minute. Goodness, I want to go through all these things. I thank you for sharing that. I told everybody we're going to get that out. And if all of you want to weigh in on this, I've got a list in a minute. I'm going to give some summer school swag away to people that are actually sharing their Plum strengths, their Plum kind of key talents. So if y'all go ahead and weigh in the comments, if you think George has probably earned one by sharing his openly in front of everybody there, because that was pretty transparent. If you think that's worth it, or if he should have given it just a little bit more, you could tell me that too. It's okay. You can take that feedback. So we're going to jump into the agenda, some of the key things we're going to see here for the rest of the day. So we're obviously in our break right now. We're going to give some things away. It's my favorite thing to do. We're going to hear a conversation in a little bit, the first HR Summer School conversation ever, where George is actually interviewing one of our guests. And so I'd love to hear from you too on that. If you'd like that one, if you think that's awesome, because we'll have to do more of that in the future if you enjoy that. So he's going to talk to Jess about Jess, the CHRO, and he's going to talk to him about the importance of mentors and connecting people with opportunities inside the business. And it's kind of continuing some of these themes we've had so far in the event about this isn't just about looking outside, but we already have some great people. How do we help them and elevate them in the business? And then we'll dive into our last conversation with Bhushan. He is incredible. He's one of the smartest people that I've met. Had a chance to meet him at an event in Bermuda a few years ago, actually, and got to hear him speak and asked him to come back and join us for summer school this year because he has some great insights on HR from a very global perspective. And so he'll give us some great encouragement. And there's a one-liner in there that I cannot wait for you all to hear because I think George is going to love it. And I know I am going to love hearing it again, and you as well. So those are what the things we have. Then we'll do some wrap-ups and things like that to finish the day out. Really quickly, a couple of things I want to give away to people because we love it. So I've seen these 5 so far. So Jennifer, Cecilia, Stephanie, Desiree, and Jesse all posted their Plum profile information there in the chat. You went ahead and did that. I saw some of you say that you had trouble getting in there. So some people are getting it. Some people are having some trouble. So keep at it. We may have broken the Plum site like we break LinkedIn and everything else. It's okay. They'll get that back up and running. So reach out to Rebecca, events@lhra.io, at that email address. And we're going to give all of you a shirt for being the first ones to get your Plum profile knocked out. Thank you again for doing that. A couple other giveaways there. I was looking for people who were chiming in during Troy's session about the importance of data and how we marry that up with a very people-focused profession. Right? It's one thing to say I'm data-focused when I'm in accounting or data-focused when I'm in supply chain. But to be data-focused in HR is like a tug of war between what we feel is important, which is the people, and the numbers and everything else. And I saw kind of a little bit of the debate going on actually in the comments about that. And the truth is, if we get really good at the data stuff, it helps us to better serve our people, to take care of them better because we understand what their needs are, where the needs are, how to take action on those, and all those things. And I'll say this other thing for the very end, for the wrap up there. So those are our big things. We're going to dive into this conversation now with Jess and George. We're going to hear from them around internal mentors, finding these people, helping to elevate the people in the business. It's going to be a phenomenal conversation. And I can't wait to hear it again with all of you. So here we go.
Welcome to this great session. I'm excited about it. Speaking with a great man with a great passion and a message today. So we're going to be kicking off this session, connecting talent with internal mentors and opportunities with Jess from Phenom. Jess, welcome. We're so glad to have you today. How are you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself and Phenom.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and I'm excited to be here. Mentorship is a passion of mine. I know it's a passion of yours as well, as we've gotten to know each other. So I'm the CHRO and Chief Evangelist for Phenom, Phenom People, and we're an HR tech platform that actually is in the business of connecting 1 billion people to get the right job, right? So we're working with hundreds of companies internationally, working with not only their talent acquisition team, but it's after the hire that's so important, right? Finding people that are a great fit for a job is the first step. But then after that, how do you build the relational equity and the engagement with people so that they want to be with the company and see their future with the company over the long haul? And so that's what Phenom does. It's a talent experience, but more than that, once the candidate becomes a hire, it's about the employee experience and making sure that leaders and employees engage in an appropriate way where employees feel empowered to do their best work inside of that company. So I couldn't be in a better spot. Like, I've been here for about 4 months, but the interesting thing about my experience with Phenom is I was a customer for almost 8 years before I was invited in and interviewed and became the CHRO and Chief Evangelist. So I'm really passionate about a platform like this simply because I've been a hardcore user, but also I now am inside supporting and helping people think about their team in kind of a long haul mentality, right? That they're really thinking about it over the entire career experience of an employee.
That's awesome.
So it's a pretty exciting role for me to be in. And I think the mentorship piece that we're going to talk about today is a real sweet spot, because I do think it's a primary function and something that a lot of companies struggle with to get up off the ground and actually do effectively. So I think this is a real timely topic that you're bringing up and leading on today.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. You said a lot of keywords, with Ben. If you say anything about numbers or data, Ben Eubanks, it's, Principal Ben, he goes crazy. For me, if you say culture, if you say engagement, if you mention leadership, man, those things get me really fired up. So I want to dig in and really talk about this, especially from the culture standpoint. For many people, their definitions are different. Me, when I think about culture, it's really how people feel, believe, and behave most of the time. And as we engage in this mentorship mindset, what are some of the key elements for employers and companies to really, have that foundation and the importance of it to have mentees and mentors connecting together?
Yeah. I think you actually said something really well about culture, right? I always define culture as your culture is whatever you do the most of. You can say something or write something and hang it on a wall, but your culture is what you do the most. And so you have to be really thoughtful about that. And then you can't just accidentally let culture happen. You need to build culture with values and structure. And so it's really important that organizations that say we want to have a mentor culture, you have to decide to commit to it then, you're right. There's going to be time, talent, and treasure that you've got to put against an organizational inclination like that. So it's not just got to be something you talk about, it's got to be something that you do. So when I think about mentorship, I think about it underneath a fairly large umbrella, and we can kind of break these 3 things down at any depth we can in the next 15 minutes or so. But the first one is mission. And I think what's happening too is that a lot of companies are starting to realize there's a shift in the cultural marketplace of how people are looking for jobs, why people want to work for a company. I do want a company that's going to be able to, kind of stand the test of time, but it's not the only way and reason that I'm going to come work somewhere. I also want to know what that company stands for. You're right. The mission and the culture just can't be about increasing bottom line performance, increasing top line sales, making sure that your revenue grows year over year. That's important because a lot of companies, right, they're for profit and they need to do that. That's just table stakes today. What we're finding is a lot of especially Gen Z are really activating and say, I also want to work for a company that stands for something. And not only stands for something where, how are you going to invest in me so I can become a better version of myself, stronger, faster, right, smarter? but also what do you stand for in the community that you're in? What do you stand for in the greater community, especially with all of the transaction and all of the disruption over the last 2 or 3 years? People are saying, I don't have time to just work. I want to work on purpose. And so I think companies need to really think about mission. And even though they maybe had a mission that's been unchanged for 20 years because it's been so phenomenal, I would encourage every company to look at mission and a mission of their org, especially how they're investing in their talent internally. I think it's really important. So when we think about mission, that's a core to the mentor program, right? You got to have a culture and a mission in a company that's actually supporting mentorship if you're going to decide that that's what you're going to do. You can't just say it or hang it on a wall. It's just not going to work very well. And then inside of that, the 2 other categories, and I'll stop and pause for a second, is leadership. Then how are you making sure that people are empowered, informed, and trained to be mentors and mentees, because it is a skill. And then finally, the other key component that we're finding, especially being an HR tech platform, really AI empowered, is we're starting now for the first time, even in our journey, to really see the power of how AI increases the sightline of accurate information and data to allow leaders to be able to equip themselves with their team and the people that they're mentoring to actually help and make mentorships more successful than it's ever been. So the idea there, George, is if you've had mentor programs that have been lackluster or underwhelming in the past, you got to wipe the slate and start over with the idea that if I have a large population of team, I need AI to empower us to be able to see where mentor opportunities really exist, rather than just waiting for people to say, I want to mentor. Like, mentorship is about pursuing people that need and want to be mentored. And with the data out there, it's really hard to get into the data without AI support to be able to actually find that mentor opportunity that's like lightning in a bottle, right? The right opportunity at the right time, making the largest difference in someone's life.
Yeah, that you said a mouthful there, and I want to break a lot of things down.
I talked probably too long, even.
No, this is going to be awesome. When I think about mentoring, I always think about it. I'm a little bit about me, Jess. I like to break down words, and sometimes I like to fuse words together that don't belong, right? And when I think about me mentoring, I really break it down to me touring. I'm taking somebody on a tour of life, this thing that we call life, this journey that we have together. And you mentioned time and investing. And I know it sounds crazy. I'm about to be 40 years old in September of this year, but the light bulb just went off in my head. The importance of 2 things. When we talk about ROI in life, especially in the business standpoint, and then we break it down into how do we give the greatest investment to our employees and our clients, what does that look like? When we business-wise think about ROI, the first thing that usually jumps in our mind is money. Right? What's the return of investment? Money, but really our greatest ROI in life and our greatest resource in life is time and how we spend that. And now I say the word spend as now I'm deleting that word spend. The light bulb went off is that we spend a lot of our time, we spend money. What happens, especially when we're mentoring people, and I have some mentees that I mentor, my mindset went off and said, what if we stop spending time and we start investing time, right? We invest money all the time, right?
Right.
When you realize the value of money, you stop spending it and you start investing it. When we realize the power of our time, we stop spending time on things and we start investing time. And it's the difference between somebody who says I have a time management issue and a person who says I prioritize my time. So time management isn't an issue because I know the top priorities that I'm gonna spend my time with. When it goes to mentoring people, and you talked about the leadership aspect of that, and I want to get into that because I believe, whoever the leader is, that mentor is, they got to have a sense of leadership and to be able to lead themselves before they try to lead somebody else.
That's right.
How do you value the investment of time and balance that in the leadership form? Speak a little bit on that leadership, the time investment, and how that affects the mentorship that companies can have.
Yeah. To play off that word phrase, I think is really powerful. That idea of investment of time, and I'll give you a personal antidote. Right, I've got 2 adult children. I've got an oldest son who's actually getting married in the next week, and he's 26. But I distinctly remember making a decision about fatherhood. Right, because part of fatherhood is mentorship, because mentorship is typically you're mentoring someone who's walking a similar path as you. That's what mentorship is, different than coaching. We can talk about the distinction in just a minute. And so I distinctly recall holding my son for the first time, and I had a phrase that came into my mind that I used the rest of his life. I've said it to him probably 10,000 times. As I held him for the first time, looked down at him, and I said, "I'm your father, you're my son, we might as well be friends." Right. So I distinctly started to create an equality there, even though he needed me more as a child than I needed him in some senses from what he needed to just sustain life, right, to grow. But there will be a distinct time in our life where I will need him more than he needs me. And to be able to establish that path, right, that mentorship, even personally, made a profound difference in my relationship with my son today. Right. So it's the same thing, although, family is typically tighter and more intimate than your work relationships. We're spending a significant amount of our time at work. So when we invest our time in people, we have that connection, and someone is walking a path that you've already walked. That's where mentorship really becomes empowered. So now when we think about taking mentorship and investing time, the other primary mistake that I think a lot of organizations do is, well, Jess is a vice president, George is a vice president, people that are underneath him that are directors or managers, well, he should mentor them. Well, not all leaders are good mentors. You need to really qualify who a good mentor is, that they have that mentor mentality where they do see the value of that invested time, because it will cost you extra. Right? It will cost more time. You will have to sacrifice, because part of mentorship and the fulfillment is my cup is filled by filling others' cup. And so when we have that connection, now I'm available, because mentorship is about availability in some senses as well. So when we think about leadership, back to your question, the leadership umbrella of an organization, part of it is we need to understand that not all leadership is the same. If you're not a very good qualified mentor, that's okay. That's not means you're a bad leader, but you should be able to, and we should focus your leadership in other areas. But where there are mentors, then here's what you need to do as an organization. Give that mentor the space, right? Or that leader the space to mentor. Like if you're saying that you have to do everything that you're doing, and that can be a real detractor to mentorship. But if we look down the line of that investment of time, right? Because we know that with money investment, time value, there's nothing better than time value. Starting when you're in your 20s rather than in your 40s or in retirement is way better. It's the same thing with mentorship. The more we invest early, the more you get that payday down the road with people who are performing at a level that you've never seen earlier, longer, better. And so mentorship is a really important part, but how do you find the leaders that are great mentors, and how do you find the people that are prepared and ready from a mentality standpoint, mind, body, spirit, to be mentored? And that's where I think AI can help raise up the right data and information so we can see the people inside an organization, so that we don't just say, oh, I have a person that's kind of by my elbow, I should mentor them. Maybe not. Maybe it's that third or fourth person removed that's going to be the better investment of the time. So it's mission, leadership, and then using technology to help, because I think that's where we fall down, is leaders get overwhelmed with the daily tasks. Then they have a hard time digging into the detail of the data to find the people that are prepared and mature enough to ready for mentorship. And so there's a lot of misses, and then people think mentorship doesn't work, when in fact that's not the case. It's just a miss with information, timing, leaders, and making sure that it's all there at the right time.
That's awesome. You said availability, and that's key, right? Especially when you have somebody who is dependent on you. I want to spend a little bit of time on the AI portion because I believe that has a big factor in that and in this mentor. And I think that's a little bit about what you bring to the table as well, and a little in depth. When we talk about availability, again, Georgisms coming in, you break it down. AVAIL, avail means to help or benefit, right? The ability portion, it means that's the possession of the means or the skill to do something. So I'm going to benefit by bringing the skill to the table. And that's really what we're asking mentors to do. How does AI play a role in this?
So what we're finding is there's two things. One is in our day and age, we all know this. I want to have access as an employee or as a human. I want to have access to my information. I want to be able to manage my information on my own, whether that's in banking, my social media, LinkedIn, any of the platforms I'm on. I want to be able to manage and control kind of my destiny there. It's the same thing with our human capital information inside an organization. As an employee, so for instance, in the candidate experience, I want to be able to come in and I don't want to see the same experience that everyone experiences. I want a company to actually deliver me after understanding who I am using AI, because it's the only way you could do it, especially if you're a high volume hirer. I want to be able to have an experience, a pre-candidate experience or a pre-employment experience. I want to deliver it in a way that I can understand, highlighting the things that are important to me. I also want to know, am I a good fit for this organization or not? And so if I can use AI to give people job fit scores, now you might be applying for one job, but I might show you 2 or 3 other jobs that are available in that organization that you're a better fit for as a percent based on me understanding your qualifications, your experience, your background, right? And so now AI helps pre-qualify your candidate experience as an individual. Then I go, oh, maybe I'll apply for this job rather than this, or I keep on that same path because I get to see what the company stands for. I get to see videos of people that are like me, so I can hear right from the source of what it's like to work there. Now I apply, I get scheduled, it's efficient. Now I get hired. From that point forward, that information that I've already empowered the organization to know about me should carry through. And now I get to start my career planning immediately. Where do I want to go from here? And I think a lot of organizations have resented the fact that a millennial or a Gen Z, they're already looking over the shoulder of their current job for the next job. I love it. I'm saying grab that energy, help them know that they have to be successful in the here and now, but give them a path to the next thing. That's where AI comes in. Now I'm building my career pathing. I'm in charge of that as the employee. The flip side of that then is that my leadership needs to be able to probe in and be able to see that information easily and quickly, because that's where it gets bogged down. If I have to dig and mine for that, leaders fall prey to the same thing everybody does. I got to take care of the moment and I forget about the long term, or I just don't have time. AI can help bubble up the information in a really nice, clean package for a leader to be able to consistently interact with their people underneath them that they're there to nurture. Because leaders should be working through people to get work done. And sometimes they can forget that they're going to work through people rather than working on things, right? It's working in the business rather than working on the business. We want leaders to work on the business and through people. AI helps bubble that information up. So now I'm empowered as a candidate to put in the information and the path I want. And now as a leader, I can join you on that path. And that's exactly what mentorship is all about, right? Is helping join someone on the path to help them get from one place to the other.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. We're towards the end here, ready to wrap up here in a little bit, but I want to give you just a few more seconds, and I'm sure I'd rather give you a few more minutes. I feel like we can talk about this for hours, and I'm excited about that as well. But when it comes to, some key points that, we want to give our students here at HR Summer School, what is something that you can give them to wrap all of this up, to sum all this up, to say, hey, to really get this talent with internal mentors and the opportunities within the workplace? What are some key things that they can take today to get started, and or maybe it's the purpose, what is the why behind it, and your passion for that, in wrapping this session up?
Yeah, I'll wrap it up real briefly then is, if I think about it again, it's the organization really taking a hard look and making sure that their mission is made for the moment, right? Our moment in time. We need to make sure that we are committed to and educating our leaders, specifically around mentorship. So leadership matters, and we need to make sure that we're equipping our leaders and giving them the time. And then data is critical. Being able to actually not only have the data, but have it accessible. And what we're finding is a lot of that is happening through AI that's helping data be accessible for people. I'll also, though, finish with one thought. You said something really interesting about, Jess, you're using all those key words that are getting me so excited because it's about mentorship and leadership and commitment to people. And if Ben was on the call, Ben would be all about data. And my encouragement to, your listeners is, it's really actually both and. If we're right-brained and we love the idea of mentorship, we should be excited about it. If you're left-brained and you're like, data proves everything out, I'm with you. It's both and. If we're using the data to tell a story, right? It's the narrative. So am I sharing a story, and can I make that data come alive so that it can be presented in a way that impacts the organization? That ultimately is that weaving of the two. That's the magic. And so I'm excited to continue and support the summer school here. But I think what you're doing and the work you're doing is pretty phenomenal.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you, Jess, man. I appreciate everything she brought to us today. Where can people connect with you? Where can they find you to stay connected? Maybe follow you on social media. What's the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, great spot to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can follow me there. I'm posting a ton of content, a lot of webinars and things like that. I would love to connect with people. They can also get a hold of me at jess.elmquist@phenompeople.com. But LinkedIn is a great place to start.
Awesome. Once again, I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for joining this session, connecting talent with internal mentors and opportunities with Jess from Phenom. Once again, we appreciate you, and we're ready for the next session.
That was so much fun, honestly, to hear George interacting and engaging with Jess there, and so many good takeaways and things like that in the conversation. I love George just can't resist, right? You all know him well enough by now. He can't resist that. Take a word and twist it and break it down and figure out the pieces of it and then bring those back at you, whether you're expecting it or not. It forms a fun twist on things, right? It gets you to look at it from a different perspective, and I appreciate that about him. And they're talking about me while I wasn't there about my love for data, and it's okay. We'll bring it. It's actually a really good fit with the earlier conversation with Troy and some of the other things we've been talking about today. And again, I don't intentionally slot these things together like that. It just happened to be. So it's fun to see those commonalities and those tethers and ties in all these pieces of conversation. All right. We have one more session for the day. Somehow it's already there. One more session. We're going to hear from Bhushan Sethi from PwC about what the modern opportunity for HR. It's really a big look at the world and some of the key things. And some of the big takeaways in this session, I feel like we're going to expand this lens we've had. We're looking at some of these narrow pieces. We're going to expand that lens back, and he's going to give us some ideas on things we can be doing, changes we can make, things we can support, things we can lean into as HR leaders to make an impact on our people right now. So I think you'll enjoy this conversation. And George and I will wrap up with a couple more giveaways, some final announcements, a little bit of a preview of what's to come tomorrow on our last day of summer school. Gosh, it's hard to say that. So hang tight. We're going to dive right in here with Bhushan. Excited to have you with us and looking forward to another great conversation here. We're going to be talking about the things that we should be prioritizing right now. We're going to talk about some of the things that your business leaders may need from you. They may need you to step up. They may need you to speak up. And so we're going to dive into all those kind of fun things in this discussion. And I am so excited to have my friend here, Bhushan from PwC. We're going to dive into this conversation, and goodness, I'm ready to take notes myself. I'm so ready to learn from this. So welcome, sir. Glad to have you.
Yeah, good to see you again, Ben. The last time you and I saw each other was at a conference in Bermuda. So hopefully the next time we'll see each other will be in person.
Yes, that would be a tremendous treat for sure. It doesn't have to be somewhere as nice as Bermuda. I'll take anywhere, but I've been getting back out a little bit, and I bet you have as well. And it's been nice to see people face to face again.
Absolutely.
All right, before we get into some of the fun stuff that I'd love to to grill you with, frankly. The questions I want answers to, would you be so kind as to take a minute and tell the audience a little bit more about who you are and what you do before we do that, please?
Sure. I lead our global people and organization practice here at the firm, which means I work with lots of different companies on really the intersection between strategy and workforce. So, helping business leaders through workforce topics like organizational restructuring and culture and incentives and future of work type topics. I also work with HR leaders on some of those same topics as they work with business leaders. I've also started teaching since we met, Ben. I've started teaching at NYU Stern, so I'm an adjunct professor there. And I also spend some time in my global role with policy work with the World Economic Forum and some of the G20 stuff as well. So I think that's super important, especially at my stage of life and tenure, to actually start giving back from kind of not just the business side, but also a lot of what we do in the people space does impact policy and policymakers, whether it's reskilling, good jobs, safety in the workplace. And so that's kind of what I spend my time. And I live in New York City, and I have a fading British accent, but I've been here for 20 years and I grew up in London.
Did you say a fading or a failing accent there?
Fading.
I've never heard someone say that before, but I love that. That's so great. Okay. So one of the things I want to ask you about is, in addition to all the things you just mentioned, you also spend a significant amount of time writing and sharing your ideas, and again, doing a lot of giving back to the community. And so one of the things I'd love to hear from you is, I saw a piece recently that you had written talking about the big CEO study that PwC does and talking about some of the findings in there. It was super fascinating. I'll try to make sure and drop a link in the notes, everybody, while you're listening here. Try to drop a link in the notes so you can go check that out if you want to read more on that. But one thing that stood out to me in that is that about 1 in 3 CEOs said that part of their own compensation, their incentives, things like that, are tied to people-related metrics. And I just love to get your take on that. What does that mean for HR's relationship with leadership? And are there any kind of things we can take from that finding there?
Yeah, it's potentially not enough. 1 in 3 means 2 in 3 is actually not. Yes. And so the interesting piece around that data point is we really asked the question because we hear a lot about stakeholder capitalism and that we care about and we value different things. It's not just about analysts and financial outcomes, it's about customers and employees, etc., and about obviously increasingly things like climate. So we really put that question to test. So we said, to what extent is your business measuring things differently? And so, as you said, it was actually 60% actually said we care about employee engagement, people type metrics. 70% said they care about customer type metrics. Something like 40% said they care about kind of ESG type metrics at the business level. We then asked that same question to say, which of these do you embed in your executive scorecards and put compensation at risk for? And then the numbers kind of plummeted. And so for people, it was 1 in 3. For climate, it was even less. For customers, a little bit more. And so what that really tells us is the balance. If we really want to change how work gets done, and if we've learned anything through the pandemic, then about well-being and the importance of safety and the importance of kind of giving people the currency of time, and also giving people time to invest in their own learning, and all of those important aspects that have driven the Great Resignation and also driven kind of a lot of inequity in our society and polarization in the workplace. If we want to value things differently, all of the other measures around climate and customer and people have to be embedded in the executive scorecard. So it's a good thing that we're talking about, and at the business level are looking at those different measures. But as you know, this stuff takes a bunch of time. And until you actually change how executives are compensated, we won't make some of the changes that we should be making, and that everyone on this call has probably been talking about. I know you and I have been talking about for probably the best part of 40 years between us.
When I saw the number, I had the same thought that you did. Hey, somebody is. We'll call that a small victory. But at the same time, for everyone that is essentially 2 aren't, or what the numbers actually were there, there's the bigger population is not yet doing that. And so I'm thinking, for those that are doing it, let us sincerely hope that they start telling their stories and we start highlighting them and seeing the outcomes of doing that. Because the more that happens, the more likely we'll be able to leverage and lever our own leaders to start following that practice, to start adopting that. Because you said, changing human behavior is hard. We've made a living trying to help people do that better and all the things that are wrapped into that. But there's an opportunity there to really make that a priority. If you say you care about your people, it's very easy to say that. As you said, the numbers, when they initially said, yes, it's important. Are you doing it? No, like I won't meet your eye, won't meet your gaze at that point. And it's a human thing, honestly.
Yeah.
We do that.
And I would say the more that HR professionals through processes that we own, like performance management, or at least the custodians of, can push it through that angle to say, we know that we've got to measure the what and the how through performance measurement, through the kind of the annual goals setting at the individual level, maybe the team level. But to what extent can we actually push the concept of a balanced scorecard, which is hardly a new concept? It's older than many people. It first came out in 1992, the balanced scorecard concept. The more that we could be pushing that on the business side to say, beyond revenue and profitability, what is the quality metric? What is the well-being metric? Obviously, employee engagement, many companies measure. Are we measuring the investments in learning that we're putting out there for our people? Even if they are people that end up leaving us, if we're improving the future employability of a workforce, surely that's a good business and a society metric. So the more HR could be pushing the business and finance and technology around the top-down balanced scorecards, I think we could be in a better place. But will some of this has to be regulatory driven. Some of this has to be driven out of a crisis. I think the people measures will, the measures around well-being and quality jobs are hopefully, and safety are probably here to stay. But there'll be some others that it'll take some time for some of these ESG metrics to go mainstream, unless we have significant kind of regulatory compliance changes.
But I guess I'll ask you a different question. One of the things that you talk about a couple of different areas there that we have the opportunity to influence. We don't control many of them, but we have the opportunity to influence in a lot of areas. And so I wanted to ask you, because I saw in a recent interview where you covered this entire spectrum of different things that we could be putting our hands to in terms of focus and attention and effort and transparency from an organizational perspective, pay equality, employee training, like you were talking about, upskilling people. We have all these different buttons we can push, right? Trying to make an impact, trying to serve our people well, but also serve the business at the same time. And I'd love to hear from you. I mean, there's such a laundry list, and it's easy to get just overwhelmed by how many things we could be focusing on. Any suggestions or encouragement for the audience listening in on things they should be prioritizing right now?
So whether it's HR professionals for the HR function or pushing the business, the old adage of in times of uncertainty, and especially in times of crisis, like focus on what you can control. From a business context, that's super important. So if your company can invest in reskilling people and lifting the general level of acumen on climate and the extent that climate impacts your business and your products and your ways of working and your individual carbon footprint and behaviors, that's really important on a business level and a societal level, just like many firms have invested in digital upskilling for their people. Probably more for their knowledge workers and less for the essential workers, but firms have done that. Managers have had training when they've become managers. A lot of that management fundamental training now needs to be kind of retaught, because the concept of how to have difficult conversations, how to give and receive feedback, managers are having to do that in a very important way, building trust in a hybrid environment in an inclusive way. And so the more that you can have some of these no regrets moves, things you can control, whether it be training for your organization, whether it be changing work schedules so that you can give people back more the currency of time, looking at your incentive models to say, are they balanced enough? So that's really where I was kind of coming from, to say, where can HR professionals push the business to say, in times of uncertainty, people will remember these things that you do. Having a clear narrative on how you're dealing with uncertainty, with rising inflation and interest rates, and how your revenue model might change and what that might mean in terms of potential layoffs, and how do you make those in a humane way with dignity to the extent you can, or can you protect jobs? So that was really the concept behind it. Focus on what you can control, have HR be the conscious and pushing the business to say, let's invest in our people. It's the right thing for our business. People will be more productive. They'll have long memories. If we hit a downturn, we're going to hit an upturn at some point. And it's an important point in terms of reputation for, especially for those consumer brands, and those where kind of employees are also customers.
Yes, goodness. I love that concept of, I think you said no regrets, making no regrets changes there. I think that's a phenomenal way of looking at this, because there are some where we're not sure, right? Is there a payoff? Is there a payback? But there are some others, you're like, regardless what the outcome is here, we are going to make this decision, and we would make it again tomorrow if we could. I think that's a really impressive and powerful way to put that, because for the leaders out there trying to decide, there are times where you have to make a decision and you're thinking, oh, what does this mean for my job if it goes sideways? What does this mean for the future of our company? Is this going to, hey, you know what? In some of those cases, even if this doesn't pay us back immediately and we see the immediate returns and everyone's cheering our name on the streets, our people are going to be better off and their families are going to be better off because we made that decision. That's an incredible place to be. Wonderful. Okay, for the last thing I want to ask you is, one of the key things we do here at HR Summer School is we try to not just educate the entire population of amazing HR leaders out there, but also to give them some encouragement, some inspiration. And you get the opportunity to meet with and talk with so many different companies and see all these amazing things. And I was hoping if you have any words of encouragement or inspiration for the other leaders out there that are, honestly, they faced some of probably the toughest times that HR's ever faced in the entire history of the workforce in the last couple of years. And so the data coming out saying, hey, burnout's high, but among HR leaders, it's even higher than average in some cases. And so I was hoping you could give them some words of encouragement or inspiration for what's next. And that way they have the energy to go do it. Any thoughts?
So I would personalize this to say, like, why is it we do what we do? So why I do what I do, and I'm in a privileged position, kind of working in a large organization with lots of different clients, and I have time to invest in learning and giving back. Like, why I do what I do is because I want to be helpful through my talent, my time, and my ability to help companies make their workforces a better way, a better place, a trusted place, better for their business, better for society. The more that you can remember kind of why we do what we do. So if you're an HR professional in an industry, is it because you're trying to represent the voice of the employee? Is it because you're trying to drive more equity in your organization? There's nothing wrong with you waking up to say, what I want to do is actually serve our business better so it can improve its profits and our customers, because we need that to fund what I was describing around kind of equity and good jobs and kind of quality outcomes. So the more that we can kind of remember, like, why is it you wake up every day from a professional sense doing what you do? And if it's to support people, improve business, drive outcomes, bring some of your experience to your organization or to other organizations if you do pro bono work or work in your community. So I would just always go back to why you do what you do. And you don't really go far wrong there. And the more that you can encourage your business leaders to kind of go from, like, why is it we do what we do? What's inspiring about the bank and the fact that we can create economic opportunities for our customers? What is the fabulous opportunity if you work in tech that you can actually connect the world and bring kind of information? If you're in manufacturing, you bring products that delight people. And so just connecting back to, like, why is it you do what you do, and how you can encourage the business, because that's the importance. Like, everyone's frustrated and burnt out and challenged, and we have so much polarization in our society, Ben. But if you focus on that, you'll remember that there's a ton of value that you can add on the HR side, whether you're in HR or if you're a business person kind of taking on the people issues, for your function.
I love that. That's incredible. I was like, that's a master class in finding your purpose and your why, essentially, right there. That's that one answer.
And it may be different for different people, and that's totally
Yes.
okay. I don't think there's one way. It doesn't have to be solving, world hunger. It could be something like, I want economic security for my family. I want my kids to be well educated, and that's why I do what I do. It could be many different things.
Yes. Well,
and I do think HR professionals, Ben, are in a prime position now. I mean, you and I have been doing this for a while. This is the time where every conversation I have with a business leader comes back to, my leadership are not ready. We don't know how to be inclusive leaders. We don't know how to build trust in a hybrid environment. What about the inequity of the people who don't come into the office as often? What does this do to my DEI agenda? They're all people issues, and they all impact our clients' ability to grow and to be in business and to innovate. And so the more that we can do what we've been trying to do for years, to connect kind of business and people issues and be that strategic partner. I think that the moment is now. I think there is despite some of the stats are probably better than they were, in years past. I think there's a big opportunity.
So if everyone else has enjoyed this as much as I have, what is the best way for them to follow you or connect with you?
You can follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. We could kind of include that in the show notes. Check out some of the thought leadership that we've issued at PwC in the research. But I'd also just say that there's a lot of good research out there on these topics. The more people can stay current and engage in the debate. This isn't just about sending out research. There's a ton of great research from lots of different firms and people. I would just say, try and consume it and engage in the debate. And the more we can try and address some of these big problems together, I think, that's why I participate in things like this, because I think the collective brain is so much more stronger than the individual.
All of us are smarter than any one of us, right? That's an easy way to put
Amen.
it. Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. I appreciate your time and your expertise and your passion for what you're doing. It's incredible. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Absolutely. All right, George, I'm going to bring you on, my friends. I hope you've got your shoe ready to go, because you told me earlier you wanted to show it off, and I completely slipped on that one. So someone asked yesterday, where is George's shoe wall? Because you used to be in a different place, different background. And so you had a wall behind you completely full of shoes, as far as the eye could see back there. And so to satisfy, I think, some of those, and probably just to satisfy your own love of this, you asked to bring one with you to wrap it up for the day. So while I'm finishing up a couple things here on this end, do you want to show that off and tell the story real quick?
Yeah. So shout out to Misha Ratliff. She was the one that she's in my inbox this morning. As a reminder, hey, show me a shoe. I'm in my office now, and my shoes are in a separate room. Got to make sure you take care of the lighting and everything so the shoes don't discolor. Some people, but I got a special shoe. These shoes, they're Nike and Concept. So Concept and Nike partner together. I actually have two pairs of shoes in my office. I know that sounds funny, but I'm wearing a pair of trash can 100% recycled shoes. That's an inside story with the company I work with, Esther Recycling Solutions. But the ones I want to talk today are, Ben, these are, I think you will love them. I'm gonna bring these to Alabama when I come visit you soon. These shoes, and I'll pull them up here. My favorite part is the tongue. It's nice velvet. And they come with different shoestrings that are the same material. And this is 100% legit. And then it's a 1969. So if you've ever heard, if you're a music festival type person, these are designed with Woodstock, 1969 music festival that took place in August of 1969. So very good concept of a lot of different materials that was found in the crowd in the picture. And it's just cool, man. It's got the nice, the cowl, print, and it's like, you can feel it. It feels good. The denim jeans feel, and then obviously, the Nike symbol with the flowers and things of that nature. So these are one of my new, this is a 2020 shoe, 2022 pickup that I got just earlier this year that I really like. So Misha, I hope this satisfies your shoe of George.
Ratings there, right? Yes. Awesome. Goodness. All right. Really quickly, I got a couple of announcements and things, and then I'm going to try to give George the last word to give y'all a good, encouraging send off for the day. Couple quick things, really quick. A couple giveaways. So again, watching everybody chiming in, the conversation's been phenomenal. Yesterday we ended up having 4,000 something comments. Just people, I love this. Frankly, I love it. So here's a couple things. A couple people that have been chiming in. Those of you on the left there, grab reach out to Rebecca, ping her. She'll get you on the list so we can send all these out in one fell swoop. So we'll have a big shipping day, probably the next week or two, to get these things all out. Aaron, I saw you mention something about AI, and I usually keep my book somewhere handy. It's not here. I wrote the book on that. So I'd love to send you one of those signed, and just as a as an encouragement to you, because you said you want to know more about AI and how it can work to help us in HR to be better and more effective at our jobs. And I think you'll enjoy that very much. It's written the same way that I speak and the way that we bring stuff here at summer school. So it's very down to earth. It's very practical. So I'll get you that one, Aaron. Just ping Rebecca at Events at Lighthouse, the email address there. We'll get you set up. And by the way, I have just realized that I may have started putting people's names on the list more than once. So if you get on there again, that doesn't mean you don't get anything again. If you're still chiming in and I grab your name a second time, then ping us anyway and say, hey, I've already got this, but we'll get you something else. So we've got a prize closet full of stuff to pass out to everybody. So a couple quick things on that. A fun note, by the way, I'm actually working on a secret project right now that is going to be happening in the next month or so, month or two. I think it's going to happen in August, and I'll keep you all up to date on that. But it's going to have to do with field trips. And so I'm taking my first field trip next week. I'll be at SHRM. So if any of you are going to be at the SHRM event in New Orleans, please ping me directly. I'll be doing a book signing, and I'm going to bring a special set of things just for summer school people. So different than what we're giving away here at the event as a thank you to all of you. So I've already had a couple people reach out. Sherry, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person there, and a couple of the others. So I'd love to see you in person if you're going to be there. It'll be a fun experience. And I also want to just say a quick, again, thank you to the sponsors who helped make this event possible. They've all chimed in. You got to hear from almost all of them now. We have, I believe, one or two more speakers from our supporters there that are going to show up tomorrow, and you'll hear from them as well on our last day. Tomorrow, we have some really excellent conversations that are happening. I actually had one of the speakers ping me today, like, what in the world? I just stepped in to check it out the day before I'm speaking, and it's all over the place. Just people are wild and people are engaged, and it's so fun. And so that's a fun thing for me to see them surprised by that, because when you speak at events, you usually have an expectation, and summer school, you as an audience, y'all blow that completely out of the water. So thank you to all of you for that. All right, George, we've got a minute or two left. I want to pass that baton over to you, the microphone over to you to wrap it up, give us a send off for the day. Thank you to everybody, by the way, before I pass to George. I appreciate all of you and can't wait to see you all tomorrow for our closing day. We'll have a lot of fun, more giveaways, more good stuff. Stay tuned. George?
Yeah, I think, and I mentioned in the chat, Ben, the key thing that stuck out to me during all these sessions today, one word is just transparency through it all. I think the more transparent we become as leaders in our work field, in our workplace, and even outside of work, being transparent as a parent or a family member or a friend, as well as a coworker, is so important. It allows that window of trust. It removes insecurities and doubts of uncertainty. And so I want to challenge people today to really be transparent, right? Remove, the walls that we may build up because we've been hurt or we've been offended, and set the expectation and that standard for yourself. To really open that window, open that door, open that room of vulnerability, even when it does not make you look like what you want to be, right? And so when you're not perfect, it's okay. We're not perfect. I've said it many times, Ben, I'm a man of faith. I'm not perfect. I'm just forgiven, right? So like I'm a failure, but I'm a great failure. I'm going to fail forward very little of the time. I try not to fail backwards, but the more transparent we are about who we are, where we are, and where we want to be, that is going to help us as leaders. And we talk about that leadership, moment and what it really means. And I always say leadership in life is really is a sum of how well we lead ourselves. And so being transparent, number one, with George, today, George feels great. Tomorrow, George may feel horrible, and that's okay. We said it many times, it's okay not to be okay. But if there's one word, Ben, to wrap up today and lead us to tomorrow, is I want to challenge everybody. Let's be transparent with our team, with ourselves, with our friends, with our family, and show that. Last word, I love you.
That's me or to them, George?
It's to everybody. I love you all. I didn't give everybody a hug virtually to start off, so I'm ending today saying I love you. for who you are and believing in where you want to be.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. Love you back and can't wait to see you tomorrow right here with everybody else for day 3, final day of HR Terminal School 2022. Hope all of you have a great rest of your day. Go out there, be kind to somebody else, and we'll catch you here tomorrow.